Chapter 828. She's the one who should enjoy her life. Mrs. Ren looked at Gu Qiuyue in front of her. The corners of her mouth opened and closed for a long time, but she could not say a word. Gu Qiuyue was extremely anxious. Say something. What's their relationship? No, not an enemy but a relative, and... Mrs. Ren wanted to cry but had no tears. She slowly told Gu Qiuyue what she had found out. Gu Qiuyue was stunned. She fell back into her chair in disbelief. Her pupils constricted as she muttered to herself. You're saying that that person is Gu? Gu Yundong? She opened a shop and is rich now. She even knows the young master of the prefecture magistrate's family. She will bring Gu Dafeng and his wife back and enjoy life? As she spoke, she suddenly laughed. Mrs. Ren, are you joking with me? She did not believe that Gu Yundong was still alive. How could Gu Dafeng enjoy life? Why could she only be someone's concubine and be tortured by the main wife every day? Now, she was even despised by the old master. And Gu Dafeng, Gu Yundong, and the others had to live better and better? There was no such logic. She was the one who was supposed to enjoy life. Gu Qiuyue suddenly stood up. I don't believe it. I want to take a look. I have to see it with my own eyes. As she spoke, she rushed out. Mrs. Ren's expression changed and she hurriedly hugged her. Aunt, calm down. I'm not calm. I just can't let them have a good life. Her eyes were red with hatred. She was indignant about Gu Dafeng, but she really hated Gu Yundong. If she hadn't caused Master Qian's death back then, Master Qian's subordinates wouldn't have blamed her. They had chased after her and wanted to take her back to report. She wouldn't have been separated from Fu Ming and her daughter wouldn't have died tragically. If not for Gu Yundong, their family would still be together. It was all because of her. Because she hated Gu Yundong but had nowhere to vent her anger, when she saw Gu Dafeng and her husband who were close to Gu Yundong, she brought them back to the Zhou family to torture and humiliate them. She wanted them to live a life worse than death to atone for Gu Yundong's sins. The more Gu Qiuyue thought about it, the more she hated it. Mrs. Ren could barely hold her. Seeing that there were people poking their heads over, she panicked and pinched Gu Qiuyue hard, finally waking her up from the pain. Mrs. Ren said anxiously in a low voice, Aunt, calm down. There are people staring at us outside now. Do you want to be sold by Master? Gu Qiuyue shuddered. Of course not. She couldn't cause any more trouble now. Otherwise, Zhou Dafu would lose his last bit of patience. But, Mrs. Ren pulled her back to her seat and said softly, I know Auntie is indignant, but it's already so late. Even if you go to look for her, you won't be able to see her. Moreover, there are people watching outside. Don't worry. I'll arrange it. We'll find a way to sneak out tomorrow. Gu Qiuyue nodded in a daze. All right, I'll listen to you. Mrs. Ren sighed. Seeing that the people outside had left, she sat down. This snow-blowing garden was no longer the original snow-blowing garden. Ever since Master found out about Concubine's true colors, he was worried about her. Coupled with Madame adding fuel to the fire, almost all the servants in the snow-blowing garden had been changed. A few of them were planted by Madame. This made Mrs. Ren's hands and feet tied. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 829. Find her. To be honest, Mrs. Ren blamed Gu Qiuyue in her heart. In order to vent the anger in her heart, she actually allowed her sister and brother-in-law to be beaten and scolded at will. In the end, after the matter was exposed, she was also blamed by the old master and her status in the residence plummeted. However, she had no choice now. Gu Qiuyue was not very knowledgeable. Other than being unclear about Gu Dafeng, she listened to her. Moreover, although old master hated Gu Qiuyue, he still let her stay in the snow-blowing garden safely. This meant that old master still cared about their affection. It was not impossible for her to make a comeback. Mrs. Ren still wanted to use her to continue acting like a tyrant in this residence. After comforting Gu Qiuyue, Mrs. Ren went back to work. The next day, she asked one of her trusted maids to change her clothes with Gu Qiuyue and pretended to be uncomfortable in the room. Anyway, Gu Qiuyue pretended to be sick for 2 days in order to regain Zhou Dafu's attention. The servants who were watching over them were used to it and would deliberately mock her and pretend not to know, let alone invite a doctor. Then, Mrs. Ran took Gu Choyue out of the back door with the excuse that she was going to get some medicine for concubine Gu. Gus was a little far away. By the time Gu Choyue arrived outside Gus, it was already noon. There were many people on this street and there were many guests in Gus. Gu Choyue stood far away and could not see the people inside clearly. She frowned and asked Mrs. Ran, "Are you sure this is Gu Yundong's shop? How can she open such a big shop and have such a good business?" Mrs. Ran was stunned for a moment. Actually, she was not very sure. But yesterday, Gu Yundong indeed acted like she was the master of the house. Even the shopkeeper in the shop did not say anything when he saw her bringing people to the backyard. Wait, perhaps Gu Yundong had something to do with the shopkeeper? Seeing how innocent Gu Yundong was, and how she told her everything she asked, it did not seem like he could open a shop. At the thought of this, Mrs. Ran felt a little more confident. "Let's go closer and take a look." Gu Choyue stuck her head out for a long time. In the end, she only saw the shop assistant coming back and forth. She felt very anxious. You should have asked around yesterday to find out where her family lives. Mrs. Ran resisted the urge to roll her eyes. What excuse did she use to inquire about other people's residences? She was also annoyed, but she still brought Gu Choyue forward. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the shop, someone suddenly walked out of Gus. It was a woman. Gu Qiu's eyes widened. "That's Gu Yundong?" Mrs. Ran saw it too. She pursed her lips and nodded. Gu Choyue clenched her fists. She was really here. Was she really the owner of this shop? The hatred in her eyes was about to spread. Her emotions shot towards Gu Yundong at the door, making her look over as if she had sensed something. Mrs. Ren's expression changed drastically. She turned around abruptly and stood in front of Gu Choyue, blocking their vision. Gu Yundong only took a glance before quickly retracting her gaze. She just smiled and asked Tong Shui Tao, who was standing beside him, "Where are they standing?" "That's right. I thought I hid it very well." Tong Shui Tao was very speechless. Didn't they know that her whereabouts were very eye-catching? As she spoke, a carriage slowly drove over from the street. When it reached the entrance of Gus, it slowly stopped. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 830. She's going to tear them up. Gu Yundong glanced in Gu Qiu's direction again before walking towards the carriage. The carriage door opened and Yunshu and Yuanzhi jumped out. Then they turned around and let Gu Dafeng, who was behind them, get out. Gu Yundong smiled. "Aunt, you're here." "That's right." Gu Dafeng had been recuperating well for the past 2 days and was much more energetic. The 2 children said that I couldn't stay at home all day and insisted on dragging me out for a walk. Coincidentally, they wanted to come to the shop to take a look, so I came with them. "You should come out for a walk. Didn't Dr. Xiong say that walking is good for your health?" Bien Han couldn't come out because of his legs, and he didn't want to trouble others, so he continued carving wood at home with a knife. Xiao Qing Yuan said that he would get someone to make a wooden wheelchair for him. In any case, it would take a long time for him to recover after he treated his legs. It would be more convenient to sit in a wooden wheelchair. However, it was not done yet. He had to wait a few more days. "Sister, is this our shop?" Yunshu walked inside excitedly. He had been in the prefectural city for a few days, but he had never come to the shop because of various things. Now he finally saw it. Yuanzhi was still standing on the spot, holding Gu Dafeng's hand. Ever since he reunited with his parents, he had become different. With someone to rely on, he felt much more at ease. The carriage behind the 2 of them was pulled away by Lu Shang, who had brought them over. The area at the entrance instantly became much empty. Hence, when Mrs. Ran, who was not far away, stepped back and no longer blocked Gu Choyue, she immediately saw Gu Dafeng and her son holding each other's hands. How could this be? Gu Cho widened her eyes in disbelief. Gu Yundong had actually asked Gu Dafeng to come over from young Master Daya's side. Not only that, but Gu Dafeng had also put on new clothes. She was radiant and reunited with her son. It was as if all the suffering before was an illusion. Her good days had really come. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand it. Gu Qiu's eyes turned red as she walked towards Gus. Mrs. Wren cursed in her heart and quickly hugged her. Aunt, calm down. How can I calm down? Gu Yundong clearly deserves to die, but she actually opened such a big shop now. Gu Dafeng should have been stepped on by others and served others as a slave for the rest of her life. But now, she's actually wearing gorgeous clothes and reunited with her son. Someone even drove a carriage for her. Why? Even she didn't have any of these. What right did these two bitches have to enjoy it? She couldn't stand it. Gu Qiuyue exerted all her strength to break free from Mrs. Wren's grip. The passers-by looked at them and pointed at them with strange expressions. Mrs. Wren was anxious, afraid that the commotion here would attract the attention of Gus people. But this time, even if she pinched Gu Qiuyue hard, it would be useless. There was only one thought in Gu Qiuyue's mind. She would go up and tear them apart. Mrs. Wren was secretly annoyed. I know you're unwilling, but what can you do even if you're unwilling? Could it be that you can kill them? You can't do anything. Once you rush in front of them, you might be grabbed by the shop assistants and shopkeepers and sent to the government office. Do you want Master to give up on you completely? Gu Qiuyue was stunned, and the commotion quietened down. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 831. Resurrection. Mrs. Wren heaved a sigh of relief and continued. And don't forget that Gu Yundong knows young Master Dai from the prefecture magistrate's office. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to bring Gu Dafeng and his wife home in just half a day. Later, she will complain to young Master Dai. If young Master Dai wants to pursue the matter, old Master will be the first to not let you off. Gu Qiuyue listened and finally calmed down completely. Her flushed face gradually returned to normal. Mrs. Wren continued, I didn't bring you here today to agitate you to risk your life. I wanted you to see with your own eyes that their lives are good now. You can't touch them easily. Gu Qiuyue suddenly turned around and glared at her. She sneered. Are you trying to tell me that I'm just a concubine who has fallen out of favor? The tables have turned. Do I have to kowtow and apologize to them when they see us? No, I want you to know that you can only deal with them if you're strong and stand higher than them. Gu Qiuyue was stunned for a moment. After a while, she snorted. You make it sound so easy. How can I stand higher than them? I'm just an unloved concubine now. I don't have money or anyone in my hands. I don't even know young Master Dai. Mrs. Wren wanted to roll her eyes. This person was really insensible. That's why you have to fight for it. You have to obtain old Master's love again and become the mistress of the Zhou mansion. Mrs. Wren's eyes were shining. You have to do everything you can to squeeze Madam out. When you can make a decision in the manner, you will be able to know the madams of the real rich families in the prefecture city. So what if you don't know young Master Dai? Can't you know Miss Dai and Madam Dai? As long as you build a good relationship with them, what else do you have to worry about? The picture that Mrs. Wren had drawn for her was so beautiful that she began to tremble with excitement. Yes, so what if Gu Yundong knew young Master Dai? When she got to know Madam Dai, she would tell Madam Dai that Gu Yundong was shamelessly hooking up with other men and wanted to seduce young Master Dai to marry into the Dai family. At that time, she would not even need to do anything, and Gu Yundong would be directly dealt with by Madam Dai. Perhaps in order to prevent future troubles, not only Gu Yundong, but the entire Gu family, including Gu Dafeng, would be thrown into jail and finished together. Gu Qiuyue laughed. She was so excited that her eyes were red and her fingers were cracking. Mrs. Wren heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Qiuyue was a country bumpkin who didn't know anything. In addition, she was blinded by hatred, so she fell for her tricks. She knew very well that even if Gu Qiuyue got rid of Mrs. Zhou, she might not be able to become the first wife. Even if she became the first wife, she would definitely not be able to get to know someone like Madam Dai. It was impossible for Madam Dai to like her at all. But so what? As long as she listened to Mrs. Wren and pulled Mrs. Zhou down, everything else was not important. Gu Qiuyue tried her best to retract her gaze from Gus and look elsewhere. Only then could she listen to her mother calmly. All right, I'll listen to you. What should I do next? Get pregnant with a son. Gu Qiuyue frowned. But now Old Master has already. So what? Old Master still has some feelings for you. As long as it's a little, you can revive. At that time you can seize the opportunity. When you have a son, you will have a bargaining chip to fight with Mrs. Zhou. Although Gu Choyue frowned, she still nodded. Mrs. Ren was satisfied. Let's go. I'll tell you what to do when we get back. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 832. The Jumpy Yunshu and Yuanzhi. Gu Choyue looked at Gus unwillingly and left angrily. Neither of them knew that not far behind them squatted a woman who had her ears pricked up and was pretending to wipe her shoes. Seeing that they were about to leave, that person stood up and walked towards Gus with her head lowered. Gu Yundong was introducing the items in the shop to Gu Dafeng. When he turned around and saw Tong Shui Tao, he nodded slightly and said, "Aunt, go upstairs and rest for a while." Then, she called out to Yunshu and Yuanzhi, who had already gone to the backyard. "The two of you, help Aunt to the second floor and enjoy the scenery." Eldest Aunt Gu looked at her helplessly. "What do you mean by helping me? It's not like I can't walk. Why do I need to help?" However, Yunshu and Yuanzhi had already run over quickly and grabbed her hands from both sides. "Aunt, this way. Be careful." "Mother, let's go to the second floor. I heard from Kiki that the second floor of this shop is very beautiful. The seats upstairs are soft and comfortable." Gu Dafeng looked at the two of them lovingly and let them hold her hand as they walked upstairs. Gu Yundong waved his hand. "I'll pour tea for you." As she spoke, she really walked towards the backyard. Tong Shui Tao hurriedly followed. The two of them asked as they walked, "Have those two left?" Tong Shui Tao nodded. "They went home." "What did they say?" "I didn't dare to get too close, but when Gu Choyue lost control, I vaguely heard something about unwillingness. Mrs. Ren persuaded her to go back and get pregnant first before becoming the first wife. I couldn't hear what happened after that, but I think she mentioned young Master Dai and Madam Dai." Gu Yundong walked to the kitchen and poured fruit tea for them while smiling. "Looks like the backyard of the Zhou mansion is about to welcome a storm of blood." "Miss, what should we do?" Gu Yundong placed the cups on the tray. Tong Shui Tao hurriedly picked up the teapot and the two of them walked to the second floor of the shop. "What should we do?" "Oh Tao, concubine Gu has been with Zhou Dafu for more than a year, right? I heard that Zhou Dafu dotes on her, but she is not pregnant yet." Tong Shui Tao was stunned. "Miss, you mean?" "Not necessarily. It's only a year." Gu Yundong shook her head. "It's normal for some people to take 3 to 4 years to get pregnant, but until now, Zhou Dafu only had one son. He didn't even have a daughter. Gu Choyue wasn't his only concubine." She smiled and said nothing more. They were already standing on the second floor. Tong Shui Tao didn't understand. "But what? Why did Miss say half of it?" Gu Yundong walked into the attic on the second floor and saw the two children lying on the sofa. "It's really comfortable. I can even sleep on it. Look at this pillow. It's soft and can even lean against the wall. There's even a storybook here. Wow, I didn't even see one in the county city. There are many bookstores in the prefectural city. There will definitely be many books. Then let's go to the bookstore in the prefecture next time." Sure. When the time comes, we can come here and sit in such a comfortable chair while drinking milk tea and reading scripts. Ah, this is simply a day for immortals." Gu Yundong, who was standing at the door, was speechless. Why were these two so jumpy when she was not around? Ahem. She coughed heavily. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 833. Misread. The two children heard the commotion and stood up in a second. Gu Yundong walked in and looked at the two of them with a faint smile. The two little guys chuckled at her and sat back down. They even jumped on the cushions. "Eldest sister, it's too comfortable here, so the small people in our hearts came out and spoke by themselves. We weren't the ones who said those words just now." "Yes, it's not us." Bian Yuanzhi nodded vigorously with a serious expression. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Just continue to make up stories. Their imagination was quite wild. Even the small people in their hearts had come out. Would another little person appear later? Would the two little people fight in their minds? All right, I won't stop you in your own home. If you want to jump, then jump. However, you can't do this when you're outside. Yunshu immediately ran over. No, we're very obedient outside. Everyone says that I'm cute and wants to snatch me home to be their son. Yuanzhi covered his mouth and laughed at the side. There were really people who saw that Yunshu was smart, good at studying, obedient, and good-looking. They said that they wanted to bring him home. In the end, Yunshu was so frightened that he thought it was true. He lectured that person for the entire afternoon, saying that it was wrong to abduct children. Other people's children would be ingrates if they were brought back. If he left his parents, sister and sister, he would not be able to eat or sleep. Then, he would die of depression and haggardness. Then, he would not let them off even if he turned into a ghost. The corners of the person's eyes twitched and he had a splitting headache. He repeatedly promised and raised his hands to swear that he would not snatch him back before Yunshu was willing to let it go. From then on, he was given a nickname in school, the relentless boy after death. Yunshu did not say these things. He felt that this nickname was not good and would damage his image. Gu Yundong knocked Gu Yunshu's head and placed the tray on the table. She then asked, "Where's Eldest Aunt?" She just saw a vendor walking past below by the window. Eldest Aunt went down. As soon as she finished speaking, Gu Dafeng returned. Gu Yundong asked curiously, "Aunt, what did you see?" "I'm fine. I saw wrongly." She had been looking down from upstairs and almost thought that the person carrying the burden was her fourth brother. However, when she walked down, she realized that it was not the case. Now that she had reunited with her eldest brother, the whereabouts of the others were clear. Only her fourth brother was still unknown. Gu Yundong saw that she was unwilling to say more, so she did not ask further and handed her a cup of fruit tea. The fruit tea was sour and sweet. Eldest Aunt Gu took a sip and could not help but widen her eyes. "It's delicious." The other two children had already gulped down half a cup. "Eldest sister, can we make this at home in the future?" "Okay." Eldest Aunt Gu looked at the children and her depressed mood improved again. She finally had a chance to size up the attic. "This place is really comfortable. Yundong, how did you think of this?" "I just thought I liked it, so I got someone to make it. However, this place is still a little small and simple. The milk tea shop is really beautiful." She happened to go to the milk tea shop yesterday and did not tell Madame Dai and Ye Shuang. She wanted to experience it as a guest and see if there was anything that needed to be improved. After checking it, it was quite good. At least in terms of eating and drinking, it tasted very good. When Yunshu heard her mention the milk tea shop, she quickly said, "Sister, can we go now? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 834. To the Milk Tea Shop. "Now," Yunshu said pitifully, "we only have a few days of vacation left. I've agreed with Yuanzhi that I have to go to Aunt Kes' house and let him see the courtyard I lived in back then. I also have to go to Tianhai Academy to experience the strong academic atmosphere. I also have to go to the bookstore and find a storybook. No, find scriptures to read." There were so many places he had to go. His schedule was too full and he was so busy. It was really not easy. Gu Yundong felt sympathy for him. She thought that since there was nothing important in the afternoon, she might as well go. "All right, I'll take you there." At this time, there shouldn't be many people. It wouldn't be a problem to bring the two children over. The milk tea shop allowed children, but it was only limited to people under the age of 10. Moreover, most of the people who brought children went to private rooms. The two children immediately cheered and raised their heads to finish the fruit tea in their cups. Gu Dafeng shook her head helplessly. She drank very slowly. The doctor said that her stomach was not good now, so she had to drink and eat slowly to avoid getting injured too quickly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gu Yunshu and Bian Yuanzhi went to the cabinet on the wall to look for storybooks. "I've never seen this before. Let's bring it back." Last time, Junjie said that he couldn't find this book in the bookstore in the county city for a long time. "I'll bring it back for him. He'll definitely be happy." When Gu Dafeng heard this after drinking, She immediately frowned slightly and asked Gu Yundong softly, "Is that okay? Can they read storybooks? Will it affect their studies? What if the teacher finds out and is disappointed in them and punishes them?" Gu Yundong comforted her. "It's all right. Mr. Qin doesn't object to students reading miscellaneous books. As long as they have a sense of propriety and it doesn't affect their studies, it doesn't matter if they read some storybooks. If it affects normal classes, he will confiscate the students' miscellaneous books and carry out. Yes, special education." Gu Dafeng did not understand special education, but from what Gu Yundong said, it was allowed by the teacher. Moreover, the teacher was the top scholar, so there was definitely no problem. Gu Dafeng was relieved. The two children had also picked 3 books and put them away. They smiled at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong crossed his arms and looked at them with a half-smile. "Did a small person crawl out of your heart just now and control your hands to get the storybook? Sister, you're really good at predicting." "Damn you," glib-tongued. The group went downstairs and informed Zheng Gang. Then, they rode the carriage to the milk tea shop. Tong Shui Tao did not go. She still had something on. The name of the milk tea shop was New Tea Pavilion. Nie Shuang and Madame Dai insisted on her naming it. Gu Yundong thought that she was bad at giving names and gave up on herself. She thought that if they were not satisfied, they could think of something else. Unexpectedly, the two of them agreed to it. It was simple and clear, allowing people to know what this shop was for at a glance. Wasn't milk tea new tea? No one had seen it before. Gu Yundong was speechless. Ha! Was it that rash? Yes, it was a very rash name, so much so that Gu Yundong did not often mention the name of the milk tea shop. Anyway, when she saw this name, she had no idea. The carriage stopped at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion not long after. Before the two children got out of the carriage, they had already lifted the curtains and saw the 2-story tall shop in front of them. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 835. New Tea Pavilion. New Tea Pavilion? They got out of the car. Gu Yunshu and Bian Yuanzhi looked up at the name on the plaque, deep in thought. Gu Yundong coughed lightly and was about to say, "Hurry up and go in. There's nothing interesting about this name." Unexpectedly, Yunshu suddenly said, "Cook new tea from the river and buy all the green mountains as a drawing screen. When I see these 2 words, I can feel that this tea shop gives people a leisurely feeling." "Ha! Are you sure?" It was rare for Gu Yundong to have a knot in her head. She looked at the plaque above her head with a gratified expression. "Relief?" Gu Yundong shivered and quickly said, "All right, don't stand at the door. Let's go in first." Only then did they walk in. New Tea Pavilion's business was really booming. Even if it was not time for afternoon tea, more than half of the people in the hall were already seated. Most of these people were dressed gorgeously and spoke very softly. Even when they smiled, they covered their mouths with a handkerchief. Therefore, when she entered, she had a quiet and elegant feeling. However, Gu Dafeng was so shocked that she did not dare to walk forward. So this was what the so-called milk tea shop was like. She thought that it was similar to Gus. However, when she came in, she realized that it was completely different. She stood here as if she had walked into another world. She looked especially out of place. Gu Yundong took a few steps and realized that her aunt was not following her. She quickly turned around and saw that she was at a loss. She was shocked and immediately took a few steps back to support her arm. Gu Dafeng grabbed her tightly. "Yundong, I don't think I should go in." Gu Yundong thought for a moment. "It's fine. Well, go to the private room. It's not in the hall. Eldest aunt, don't be afraid. I'm here. Yuanzhi is also here. This is my shop. You're an esteemed guest here. Come, hold your head high. I'll bring you in." She did not know if it was because of what Gu Yundong had said, but with her and Yuanzhi around, eldest aunt Gu felt a surge of vigor. Yes, what was there to be afraid of? This shop belonged to Yundong. If she didn't even dare to enter her niece's shop, not only would she embarrass herself, but she would also embarrass Yuanzhi. Gu Yundong looked at her slightly raised face and smiled. She still wanted her eldest aunt to become the hearty eldest aunt of the past. How cute, right? Let's go. I can do it. Gu Dafeng also smiled. She was still very nervous, her palms were sweaty, and her back seemed to be sweating. She could even feel the guests in the hall looking over. But it didn't matter. She had Yundong by her side. She wasn't afraid. Gu Yundong held her arm and walked steadily to the counter with a smile on her face. Yunshu and Yuanzhi were already standing in front of the counter. When they saw the menu beside them, they couldn't help but lean over to take a look. There was a lady behind the counter. She smiled and asked them, "Did the two young masters come here on their own?" Yunshu looked up and met the eldest sister with a sweet smile. Her eyes were also bright. "No, I came with my sister and aunt." Then she pointed in Gu Yundong's direction. The girl was still smiling as she looked in that direction. The smile remained on her face, but her eyelids twitched violently. Gu Yundong lowered her head and whispered to eldest Aunt Gu. She did not see her. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 836. Gu Yundong is bankrupt? When she reached the counter, she asked the two children, "Have you thought about what to eat and drink?" "I want to drink milk tea and eat those fries," Yunshu said quickly. "I want double skim milk." Yuanzhi had a special fondness for this. "And chicken nuggets." Gu Yundong looked at eldest Aunt Gu again. The latter did not know how to read and did not know what delicious food there was. She was a little nervous. But with Gu Yundong by her side, she quickly calmed down. "Just order. I don't know what to drink." Gu Yundong thought for a moment and said to the girl, "Then give me another pot of osmanthus tea and a plate of osmanthus cake." She said to eldest Aunt Gu, "Osmanthus tea is good for the stomach. During this season, the osmanthus flowers this year have been plucked and dried. The osmanthus flowers in new Tea Pavilion are all fresh." "All right, I'll try." Gu Yundong said to the girl, "That's all for now. We'll order whatever we want later. We want a private room. The type that children like." When it was renovated, there were many types of private rooms. Gu Yundong did not know which one was still empty, so she could only ask the waiter. The girl's hand under the counter gently tugged, then nodded with a smile. "All right, I'll get someone to bring the guests to the private room." The girl first noted down what they had ordered. Then, she found another young round-faced girl and led them inside. Before Gu Yundong left, she asked, "By the way, where's Su Qing? I saw her yesterday when I came." Su Qing happened to be resting today, so she didn't come. Gu Yundong nodded and left. As soon as she left, she disappeared behind the door. The girl at the counter suddenly crumpled the paper in her hand into a ball and threw it on the ground. What kind of person is she? She's really shameless. She's so annoying. Another slightly older girl happened to walk behind the counter. When she saw this, she could not help but ask, "What happened? Who made you angry and threw the order away?" As he spoke, he squatted down and picked up the paper. He placed it on the table and smoothed it out. However, the ink on it had completely smudged the words. It was impossible to see what the customer had ordered. The girl could not help but frown. "Xiao-yi, what does it say?" "What do you care what she wrote?" "Ha!" The lady frowned even more badly. "What's going on? This customer offended you and made you have such an attitude? This won't do. The boss has said that anyone who comes is a guest and has to be treated well." "Aya, Sister Lon, you don't understand at all?" Xiao-yi snorted. "What kind of guests are they? What's going on?" Xiao-yi glared at her fiercely. "You don't know, but that woman came yesterday too." Before noon, she came to the shop and ordered 2 cups of milk tea. One was hers, and the other was her maid's. Then, the two of them sat in that corner of the hall for the entire afternoon. They didn't move at all. The more Xiao-yi spoke, the angrier she became. "Look at those young ladies and madams who came to our place. Which one of them would sit at the same table as a maidservant and drink tea? Only those ignorant and dilapidated families are so impolite." Wei Lan felt that this was wrong. "Xiao-yi, there's no rule in our shop that you can't sit with a maidservant." "What do you know?" When Xiao-yi saw her retort, her tone could not help but become heavier. "There's something even worse. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 837. 3 Bosses. A customer looked over and Wei Lan quickly pulled her back. Be quiet. Xiao Yi shrunk her head and continued, It's fine if they sit in this shop for half a day, but the problem is that they keep stealing glances at others. Learning how to eat and drink elegantly from those madams and young ladies. I feel that it's shabby. Sister Lan, it's not that I want to criticize them, but if the other madams and young ladies find out, they will lose their temper and find trouble with our shop. If Gu Yundong were here to hear this, she would definitely shout that she was wronged. She just wanted to know how satisfied the customers were with the shop and see if they liked the food. Moreover, she had really only taken a few glances. Who knew that this Xiao Yi would actually discover it? Wei Lan felt that Xiao Yi's words were all guesses. It can't be. Did you misunderstand? I saw it with my own eyes. How could I have misunderstood? Just watch. They came yesterday and tasted the sweetness. Today they came again. They even brought their families. If they come at this hour, they will definitely sit for the entire afternoon. Alright, there's another thing. Su Qing was the one who entertained them yesterday. You didn't see her. She was so attentive. When she saw that the woman had finished her milk tea, she immediately went over to refill it. I think she likes to serve such poor guests. The more she spoke, the more she went overboard. Wei Lan couldn't stand it anymore, so she interrupted her and said, You'd better tell me what's written on this list first. I'll get someone to do it so that the guests won't wait. I've said so much, but you didn't listen at all? Xiao Yi stomped her feet. Wei Lan handed the paper forward. Xiao Yi was furious. Milk tea, double skim milk, fries, chicken nuggets, and a pot of osmanthus tea and a plate of osmanthus cake. They're all gone. Wei Lan nodded and wrote again on the paper. Seeing this, Xiao Yi rolled her eyes. I told you for nothing. It's really boring. Her tone was really not good. Wei Lan pursed her lips, feeling a little dissatisfied. She was Nie Shuang's woman, and Xiao Yi was Madame Deus' woman. In the beginning, everyone was the same and got along well with each other. After all, the 2 bosses had repeatedly instructed them to get along harmoniously and not to fight among themselves. Therefore, the girls in the shop were quite friendly. After all, they were all carefully selected. At least, they did their best to treat the customers. But as time passed, conflicts arose. Among the 3 owners, Gu Yundong had never appeared, even though Nie Shuang and Madame Dai seemed to think highly of her. However, everyone still knew that this boss did not have much power. In addition, they did not know her, so they did not know her personality. Naturally, in everyone's hearts, she was not as prestigious as the other 2 bosses. Moreover, Nie Shuang and Madame Dai had brought many people with them. Boss Gu only had Su Qing. Su Qing's family background was not particularly good. Therefore, gradually, the shop was divided into several factions. In the beginning, Wei Lan thought that Su Qing was alone and would probably be ostracized by everyone. She did not expect her to be so popular, especially with the few old women in the kitchen. Therefore, even though she seemed to be alone, the people in the shop did not become enemies with her. Everyone seemed to be harmonious with her. During this period of time, everyone's mental state had more or less changed. As for Xiao Yi, she had the biggest change in temperament here. Because she felt that she belonged to Madame Dai and was superior to others. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 838. She said thank you. Wei Lan did not like her very much, but she did not dare to offend her. The balance between the 3 bosses was very important. If she broke this balance, she would probably not be able to stay here anymore. Sighing inwardly, Wei Lan brought the menu to the kitchen and got someone to quickly prepare the food. When it was done, she personally carried the tray over. The round-faced girl arranged for Gu Yundong and the rest to be in a private room with a carpet and toys. Gu Yundong regretted it the moment she entered. This place was suitable for Kiki to come over at her age. The 2 kids were a little old after going to school. Just as she thought this, she saw Yunshu and Yuanzhi go in happily. Then they started playing with the puzzles. I've solved the puzzles several times. Then why are you still playing? I want to challenge speed. I want to see how quickly I can solve it. Last time, I saw that the headmaster did it in less than 5 minutes. I want to be faster than him so that I can go to the headmaster and show off. Gu Yundong. Your aspirations are really too great. This private room is not bad. After the round-faced girl left, eldest Aunt Gu felt much more at ease. She looked around the private room and seemed to like it very much. Especially when she saw the 2 children playing on the carpet, she was even more satisfied. Gu Yundong and her sat on the sofa at the side. This is just one type of the sofas. When this place closes, I'll bring eldest aunt to check all the private rooms. Why would I need it? Of course. After all, I haven't seen all of them yet. Eldest Aunt Gu smiled and pointed at her. So you want to go yourself? The 2 children who were playing over there also heard it. We want to go too. You're going back to the county in a few days. There's no chance. Yunshu quickly stood up. Then there's no time like the present. Let's do it today. Let's wait here until closing time and then look at every room. You're really impulsive. Let me think. It was mainly because Su Qing happened to be resting today and the others in the shop did not know her. They had seen the old women in the kitchen. After all, she was the one who taught them how to make milk tea. It just wasn't convenient. Moreover, the shop closed relatively late. They didn't tell their family when they came out today, and their family might be worried. Just as she was thinking about it, there was a knock on the door of the private room. Gu Yundong looked up. Come in. Wei Lan opened the door and walked in with a tray. She smiled and placed the things on the table. Then she said, this is the milk tea, osmanthus tea, and osmanthus cake that the customer ordered. As for double skim milk and the other 2 snacks, please wait a moment. Thank you. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded at her. Wei Lan left the room and paused for a moment before turning to look at the closed door. There were really too few madams and young ladies who said thank you. They were used to being served by the people around them and had already taken it for granted. This girl. Her smile was beautiful, and her voice was pleasant. Especially when she thanked her, it actually made her feel like her work had been acknowledged. Wei Lan felt that this girl was not like what Xiaoyi had said at all. She wasn't from a dilapidated family who did not know etiquette and only knew how to imitate others. She even had an aura that was stronger than Wei Lan's young lady. Wei Lan walked back to the counter, and Xiaoyi came over again. How is it? I told you, they're in the private room. Are they looking around like they've never seen the world? Chapter 839. Demanding a beating. Wei Lan was a little annoyed. Was there no end to this? She was just a guest. Why did she have such a big opinion? She had never had an unhappy conflict with her, right? I'm asking you a question. Answer me. Xiaoyi tugged at her. Wei Lan secretly took a deep breath and quietly pulled back her sleeve. She said calmly, no, be it that girl or the others, they're all quite easy to get along with. They're very polite. I don't believe you. It must be because they're in the room. You couldn't tell. If you don't believe me, why are you asking me? Wei Lan was not willing to continue chatting with her. She carried the tray and turned around. I'm going to get busy. There are guests outside again. Hurry up and entertain them. Xiaoyi turned her head and saw a familiar young lady walking in. A smile suddenly appeared on her face and she hurriedly went up to her. Wei Lan shook her head and went to the kitchen to bring the other snacks from Gu Yundong's room. When she walked into the room, she saw her picking up the teapot and pouring tea for Gu Dafeng. Wei Lan took another look. She was indeed not as elegant, slow, and dignified as the young ladies of other rich families. She looked very casual. Miss, here are your tea and snacks. Please enjoy. Gu Yundong thanked her again. When she was arranging them, he asked casually, what's your name? Miss, my name is Wei Lan. Wei Lan. Gu Yundong murmured softly and continued to ask, how does it feel to be a shop assistant here? Yesterday, she came over to check on the guests' reactions. Today, she wanted to understand the thoughts of the staff working here. Wei Lan stopped what she was doing and looked up with a smile. Of course it's good. Our new Tea Pavilion is the only shop in the entire Xuanhe Prefecture that only sells milk tea to female customers. I'm very happy to be able to work here. Others are envious of me for becoming a female employee of new Tea Pavilion. Is that so? Gu Yundong smiled and did not ask further. She turned around and called out to the two people who were still working hard to solve the puzzles. Everything is here. Hurry up and wash your hands. Otherwise, it will get cold later. Gu Yunshu had just finished the last puzzle, but it had been a long time and he felt a little defeated. Yuanzhi patted him on the shoulder. It's okay. Let's work harder. You have to think like this. The teacher is so many years older than you. When you reach the age of the teacher, you will definitely be able to solve it faster than him. Gu Yunshu was instantly comforted. His eyes lit up as he said, That's right. The teacher is already so old. His hands are much older than mine. Then he shook his chubby hand. He had been eating a little too much recently, and his hand was no longer flexible. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. In your eyes, are all people over the age of 10 old? This brat really deserved a beating. He was not cute. She urged him. Aren't you going? I'll go now. The two of them hurriedly stood up. Wei Lon quickly said, I'll bring the two young masters over. Most of the guests in this house were guests who brought their children over. They were afraid that the children would overturn the basins when they ran, so the basins were not placed inside. Wei Lon opened the door and led Gu Yunshu and Yuanzhi out. There was a washroom in the courtyard. Gu Yunshu walked on the steps and wanted to wash himself, but Wei Lon had already taken a wet handkerchief to wipe his hands. Gu Yunshu was still a little embarrassed, so he stood there obediently. When he was done wiping his hands, he said, Sister, when will new Tea Pavilion close? Chapter 840. Brainwashed by Gu Yunshu. Wei Lon was stunned for a moment. Little master, why are you asking this? She had already wiped Yunshu's hands. She got up and wrung the towel because she wiped Yuanzhi. We want to take a look at the other rooms after closing when there are no customers. As soon as he finished speaking, Yuanzhi said, Cousin said that she wanted to consider it, but she didn't agree. Gu Yunshu snorted. I will definitely convince her. My sister likes me very much. She won't have the heart to reject me. Ha ha ha, you're praising yourself. Yunshu, you're getting more and more shameless. If you mock me again, I'll draw a turtle on your face later. Thick-skinned he. Gu Yunshu pretended to cover his mouth. Yuanzhi quickly dodged to the side and said to Wei Lon, Sister, we'll go back to the room first. Then he ran. Gu Yunshu hurriedly chased after him. The two of them quickly entered the private room. Wei Lon stood on the spot and watched as their little figures gradually disappear. The corners of her mouth pursed slightly. Puffed. A familiar sneer suddenly came from the side. Wei Lon turned around and saw Xiao Yi leaning against the pillar under the corridor. She had an expression that said, Am I right? She slowly walked in front of Wei Lon and pointed at the door of the room. You didn't believe me when I told you, but did you hear him now? They're going to stay until closing time and then check all our private rooms. Wei Lon didn't say anything this time. Xiao Yi became even more smug. They treat this place as their own backyard. They can visit whenever they want. Who agreed? Why don't they take a look at themselves? Those esteemed guests wanted to visit, but our madam didn't agree. Just them? How prestigious. Wei Lon thought of Gu Yundong's expression of gratitude, and felt that she was not the kind of guest who would make unreasonable requests. Hence, he still defended her. Just now, it was just the thoughts of the two young masters. You heard it too. That girl didn't agree. But she said she'd think about it. She didn't say no. Perhaps, it's to appease the little masters. Xiao Yi snorted. You're really stubborn. All right, let's see if they'll stay until closing time. Let me tell you first, I won't be polite to such rude guests who make excessive requests. Our shop is backed by the wife of the prefecture magistrate. There's no need to give anyone face in the entire Xuanhe prefecture. After saying that, she turned around and left. Xiao Yi. Wei Lon chased after her for a few steps before stopping. She turned her head and looked in the direction of the room. After a while, she returned to the hall. Meanwhile in the room, Gu Yundong was brainwashing Gu Yunshu. Sister, don't you often say that we have to catch them off guard? Think about it. If you suddenly say that you want to inspect the shop and check all the rooms today, everyone won't have time to prepare. What you see will be the true appearance of the rooms, right? I heard a story from our teacher. He said that an emperor from the previous dynasty wanted to experience the suffering of the common people, but every time, he would mobilize a large number of people and tell everyone in advance. Then, everyone would know where the emperor went, so everything was prepared in advance. When the emperor left the palace, he would see the common people singing and dancing. The common people would eat their fill and wear warm clothes with a satisfied smile on their faces. Guess what happened in the end? Yunshu deliberately kept her in suspense. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 841. Ask Eldest Aunt. Yundong resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Of course, she knew that this kind of story was too common. However, when she saw that her eldest aunt was listening with interest, she did not interrupt and even asked, "What happened in the end?" Yunshu picked up a fry with his chopsticks and ate it. He took a sip of milk tea and lowered his voice mysteriously. After that, the previous dynasty was destroyed. This causal relationship had changed too quickly. Eldest Aunt Gu didn't understand. She looked shocked and asked, "Why?" Sigh. Because what the emperor saw when he went to the common people was what others let him see. He didn't know what the common people's true lives were like. He felt that everyone was living well. There were no corrupt officials in the royal court, and the common people were well fed. Then, as the emperor, he didn't need to do much. He no longer worked hard to rule, no longer cared about the officials who were rich. He even increased the taxes and taxes. He wanted people to build a summer residence for him, wasting the people's money and forcing the common people to have no way out. Eldest Aunt Gu was enlightened. She nodded and said, "I think your teacher's story is quite good. We commoners have a hard time." "Isn't that so?" Yunshu immediately nodded fiercely. Then he was stunned. No, that was not what he wanted to say. He looked at Yundong and realized that there was no other change in her expression. He quickly changed the topic. "Eldest sister, look. We have to see the bigger picture from the small. No, the smaller picture from the big. Although new Tea Pavilion is small compared to the previous dynasty, the logic is the same, right? You suddenly did this when no one was on guard." Yundong saw that his mouth was about to dry up and handed him a milk teacup. "All right, I understand. I'll get Lu Shang to go back and tell father that we won't be coming back for dinner tonight." Yunshu's eyes lit up. "Eldest sister, you're the best." Yundong tapped his head and said to Eldest Aunt Gu, "I'm going out for a while." It was not suitable for men to enter New Tea Pavilion, so Yundong asked Lu Shang, who had driven over, to rest at the tea stall beside him. The business of this tea stall was very good now. There were especially many coachmen like Lu Shang who sent Miss and Madam to New Tea Pavilion. Yundong returned after instructing Lu Shang. However, when she passed by the counter, she felt an unfriendly gaze. She turned her head to look, and the other party immediately put on a smile. Yundong raised her eyebrows. This seemed to be the person who had ordered for them previously. She lowered her eyes and suddenly smiled. Yunshu, that brat, had a point. Xiaoi maintained her smile. After Yundong left, she snorted. She would wait for 2 hours to see if this stranger would leave. If the stranger did not leave, she would have to ask her to leave. Yundong returned to the room and saw Yunshu showing off to Yuanzhi. "I told you that my elder sister dotes on me the most. Look, I just told her a story and she agreed. It made the other stories I prepared useless." Yundong could not help but knock him on the head. On the other hand, Eldest Aunt Gu could not help but ask, "You've been here all afternoon. Will it delay your work?" She knew that Yundong was very busy now. There were many things to do in the shop and workshop. "I won't delay. I can take this opportunity to rest." In fact, when she went out just now, she was still wondering if she should take down the brush and paper from the carriage to take a look. However, she instantly dismissed this thought. "I happen to have something to ask you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 842. Chasing Gu Yundong away. What is it? Eldest Aunt Gu asked. Eat first. We can talk slowly. Gu Yundong brought her a piece of osmanthus cake. Eldest Aunt Gu had a small bite and chewed carefully. In the past, she had bought a few pieces of osmanthus cake in the county city, but they were not as delicious as the ones here. After taking another sip of osmanthus tea, she felt as if her entire life was satisfied. Eldest Aunt, what are your plans for the future? Gu Yundong asked softly when she saw that she had finished a whole piece. When Eldest Aunt Gu saw that she was asking about this, she immediately smiled. Your uncle and I have already discussed this. Didn't Mrs. Wren say that your uncle's wooden carvings were selling quite well last time? I'll sell them. Although your uncle's legs are not good, his carving skills are getting better and better. Even if the little things aren't worth much, I can still earn a lot of money when there are more of them. Gu Yundong nodded. Eldest uncle had a skill that was already much better than many people. For now, he would make small wooden carvings. When his legs were better in the future, he could also make big ones. Then have you thought of where to sell them? Eldest Aunt Gu shook her head. I want to bring some to the market tomorrow and set up a stall on the ground to see how business is. Gu Yundong thought for a while. I know a market not far from Gus. It sells flowers, birds, calligraphy, paintings, and so on. The environment is not bad. Aunt, you can go there and take a look first. The small wooden carvings were also a work of art. There should be a market there. Eldest Aunt Gus' eyes lit up. Really? At first, she thought of finding a random place at the entrance of the market. In the past, when she was in Yongning Prefecture, there was no market in the county city to sell flowers and birds. Perhaps she couldn't come into contact with it, so she didn't know. Yes, the flowers in my mother's courtyard were bought at that market. The mother and daughter who sell flowers should still be there. The little girl's name is Xiao Yuan. If Eldest Aunt encounters her, you can accompany each other. They're quite good people. Eldest Aunt Gu was even happier. She hadn't even gone to the market, but she already had a companion. If there was anything she didn't understand, she could ask them. In the end, she had never walked around the prefectural city here. She was more or less worried, afraid that she would not be able to speak to the people in the prefectural city. Gu Yundong asked her about the price again. The price that Eldest Aunt Gu and her husband set was really too low. This was the prefectural city, so they could still raise the price. Moreover, although Bien Han's craftsmanship was not as good as a grandmaster's, he was serious and meticulous. Every small wooden carving was done diligently, and the quality was definitely not a problem. Eldest Aunt Gu was actually not good at doing business, but she would ask. As Gu Yundong chatted with her, she slowly felt that she had become much more straightforward. As expected, Eldest Aunt Gu was still the same Eldest Aunt Gu as before. Knock knock. Just as the two of them were deep in conversation, there was a knock on the door. Gu Yundong's voice stopped abruptly. He frowned slightly and looked in the direction of the private room's door. Gu Yunshu had already rushed over to open the door. He was stunned when he saw Xiao Yi standing in front of him. May I ask what's the matter? Xiao Yi still had a smile on her face and her attitude was still polite. She stood at the door and looked at Gu Yundong. Miss, it's already 3 p.m. 3 p.m.? So what? All right, I understand. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded gently. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 843. Fight. Xiao Yi saw that she was pretending to be stupid and did not know what was good for her, so she simply made it clear. Miss, it's like this. Ever since our new Tea Pavilion opened for business, there have been many customers every day. Whether it's the hall or the room, it's filled with people. Especially after noon, some customers still have to wait for seats. Gu Yundong frowned, but Xiao Yi continued to smile and said, It's the most crowded time now, so there's no room. A madam had tea and snacks in this room last time and was very satisfied. Today, she came over and asked us for this room again. Gu Yundong looked at her with a faint smile. How strange. There was actually someone who chased away guests. Gu Yunshu scratched his head and looked up at Xiao Yi. Didn't you tell that madam that there are already guests in this room? Xiaoyi lowered her head to look at him, then continued to look at Gu Yundong and said, "Miss, look, you've been here for nearly 4 hours." Gu Yunshu was enlightened and could not help but widen his eyes. "So you want to chase us away?" He quickly turned around and walked to Gu Yundong's side. "Eldest sister, she is a bad person." Xiaoyi was so angry that she almost fell backward. This stinky child. Gu Yundong saw that she could not maintain the smile on her face and finally said, "But we haven't finished eating." She had been talking to eldest Aunt Gu just now and only eaten 2 pieces of osmanthus cake on the table. Gu Yunshu had finished his fries, but Yuanzi's chicken nuggets were still there. He wanted to eat them later. Xiaoyi also saw the table in front of them and felt even more contempt in her heart. She did not expect them to eat so slowly just to stay here until closing time. She had really learned something. "You can take the food back." As soon as she said this, Wei Lan ran over while panting. She pulled Xiaoyi out. "Do you know what you're doing? Is this how you treat guests?" Then, she bowed apologetically to Gu Yundong. "Miss, I'm sorry. There were too many things to do. She was too busy. I'm really sorry." Wei Lan did not expect that Xiaoyi would really come here to chase away guests when she only went to the toilet. From the first day they came here as workers, Madame Dai and Miss Nye had emphasized that they were not allowed to be rude to guests or chase them away. They tried their best to satisfy the customers' needs. If they made rude requests, they had to reject them tactfully. Only those who were really unreasonable would be chased out and not be allowed to step into new Tea Pavilion from now on. However, this girl had never done anything out of line. She had brought 2 young children with her, but they did not cause a commotion to affect the other guests. It would be unreasonable for Xiaoyi to chase them away like this. She lowered her voice and warned her, "Don't go overboard. It won't do you any good to offend the guests. What's there to be afraid of? We have Madame Dai." At this moment, Gu Yundong had already stood up and was walking towards the door when she heard this. Therefore, this person was with Madame Dai. As expected, the conflict still emerged. Xiaoyi refused to leave. Wei Lan tried to pull her a few times but to no avail. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from the hall in front. Following that, the round-faced girl from before ran over and called Wei Lan and Xiaoyi. "Sister Lan, Sister Xiaoyi, bad news. Someone is fighting in front." "What?" Wei Lan and Xiaoyi were shocked. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Gu Yundong could not help but want to laugh. The girl was still a little proud. "That's right. I don't have any good points, but I know a lot of things in this prefecture." Gu Yundong was speechless. This girl was an informant. "Miss, what's your name?" "My last name is Bao." "You're really inquisitive. You didn't let this surname down at all." Gu Yundong was speechless. Miss Bao continued, "Only this new tea pavilion has delicious food and comfortable places. This milk tea is even more novel. It made these 2 madams who don't like each other come over every day. They were fine before, but I didn't expect them to fight today." As Miss Bao spoke, she shook her head. Is it because Madame Dai and Nye Shuang are not around that they've become bolder? When Gu Yundong heard her mention Nye Shuang's name, she could not help but glance at her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 845. My surname is Gu. So why did they quarrel? Miss Bao pointed at Mrs. Yu and said, "Although these 2 people don't mind appearing in New Tea Pavilion at the same time, Mrs. Yu used to sit on the 2nd floor. Today, she sat on the 1st floor. Moreover, she sat in the seat that Mrs. Tian usually sits in." Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. So they were arguing? Miss Bao seemed to have seen through her thoughts, so she nodded. Although it's a small matter, haven't they been resentful for a long time? Wouldn't they start arguing with a reason? She even dropped the cup. These 2 families were both merchants, and they were just ordinary merchants. They did not pay much attention to the rules, and they were both married. Therefore they could quarrel in such a place. If they were like the Nye family, They wouldn't dare to quarrel with others in public. Even if they got married, they would be criticized. Miss Bao took another sip of milk tea and enjoyed being a bystander. In the end, she suddenly remembered and turned to ask Gu Yundong, "By the way, I still don't know your name. I've never seen you before." Gu Yundong laughed. "Didn't you say that you know everything about Xuanhe Prefecture?" That was not cute. Wouldn't she have to inquire about it before she knew everything? "My surname is Gu." With that, Gu Yundong walked towards the two people who were still arguing. Miss Bao frowned and pondered. Gu. Which family was she from? She had no impression of her at all. Just as she was about to ask more carefully, she looked up and saw that Gu Yundong had actually gone between the two of them. She was so shocked that she almost lost grip of her milk teacup. What was she doing in their midst? Couldn't she just watch from the side? She was not the only one. Xiao Yi, who was standing in front, was also stunned when she saw her coming over. However, she quickly reached out to hold her back. "What are you doing here? It's already messy enough here." Gu Yundong pulled her arm back. Xiao Yi staggered and almost lost her balance. On the other side, Wei Lan did not notice that she was raising her voice and saying to the two of them, "Mrs. Yu, Mrs. Tian, calm down first. Let's talk slowly." "I can't talk slowly. She was the one who threw the cup at me. She clearly wanted to murder me." "You're really shameless. Who wants to harm you? You were the one who came to find trouble with me first. You took my place first." "Your place? What a joke. Do you own this new tea pavilion? Did you buy this seat? It was originally reserved for whoever arrived first. You're amazing. You even want others to specially save it for you. You usually sit on the second floor, but today, you chose to sit on the first floor and even occupied this seat. You're clearly provoking me on purpose." The two of them argued more and more fiercely, neither giving in to the other. Gu Yundong had a smile on her face. She stopped behind Wei Lan and patted her shoulder. Wei Lan's mouth was dry, but the two of them ignored her and continued to argue as they got closer and closer. If they were not careful, their fingernails would have scratched each other. Wei Lan immediately turned around when she was patted on the shoulder. She was even more surprised to see Gu Yundong walking over. "Go to the kitchen and find two strong old women," Gu Yundong said. Wei Lan was stunned for a moment before she smiled bitterly. "Miss, go back to the private room. I'll give you an explanation when I'm done." She thought that Gu Yundong was still angry about what happened before. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 846. She's Boss Gu? However, Gu Yundong said, "Wei Lan, my name is Gu Yundong. I think Madame Dai and Ye Shuang have mentioned my name before." Wei Lan's eyes widened. Gu Yundong? Wasn't that the name of the third boss of their new tea pavilion? She was actually the Gu family's boss? Wei Lan was suspicious for a moment, but on second thought, there were very few people who knew that one of the new Ming Pavilion's bosses was Gu. There was no need for this person to lie to her now. Besides, the old women in the kitchen had all said that they had seen Boss Gu. If she wasn't, she would immediately be exposed. Thinking of this, Wei Lan hurriedly nodded and quickly ran in the direction of the kitchen. On the other side, Xiao Yi had just stabilized herself. When she saw her, she wanted to go forward and criticize Gu Yundong. Unexpectedly, Wei Lan did not see her at all. Instead, she bumped into her as she ran, causing Xiao Yi to take a few steps back. She pressed her hands against the edge of the table and barely managed to stand. She was instantly furious. She swung her painful fingers and said angrily, "Wei Lan, what's wrong with you?" Hiss. Wei Lan returned very quickly with two old women behind her. Two old women squeezed into the crowd. When they saw Gu Yundong, their eyes lit up. Boss Gu. When Wei Lan heard this, she finally believed it completely. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she hurriedly greeted respectfully, "Boss Gu." She really did not expect that the rumored mysterious Boss Gu would actually appear in front of her. She even thanked her. For some reason, Wei Lan's face was a little hot. Thinking about what she had done today, she didn't seem to have done anything rude, right? As for Xiao Yi, Forget it, let's not think about it anymore. These were not things she should worry about. Boss Gu definitely knew. The most important thing now was to quiet down the two arguing madams. The new Tea Pavilion had already become a place to watch the commotion. Afraid that Gu Yundong did not know their identities, Wei Lan quickly went forward and planned to explain to her in advance. But Gu Yundong had already reached out and instructed the two old women to pull Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian away. Since the boss had given the order, the two old women naturally had nothing to hesitate about. They immediately hugged the two quarreling customers, who were about to attack, and dragged them back. Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian were stunned. They did not expect someone to dare to attack them. They turned around and realized that it was an unfamiliar old woman. They immediately stopped arguing and struggled slightly. What are you doing? Who are you? Let go of me. Let go. Only then did Gu Yundong step forward. Her voice suddenly rose as he called out to the left. Mrs. Yu. Mrs. Yu was shocked and subconsciously stopped talking to look at her. Gu Yundong raised her voice to the right. Mrs. Tian. Mrs. Tian also looked at her. The two of them were finally not as noisy as before. The entire hall fell silent because of Gu Yundong's voice. Xiaoyi's fingers no longer hurt. When she looked up, she realized that Gu Yundong was in control of the situation in front of her. She was instantly dissatisfied. She was standing far away just now and the two madams were arguing fiercely, so she did not hear the two old women call Gu Yundong boss. At this moment, they saw that this strange person was actually bossing around in her shop. She was too shameless. The two old women from the kitchen were even listening to her. Had they forgotten who was the master? Xiaoyi wanted to step forward, but Gu Yundong was already smiling at the two madams. Mrs. Yu, Mrs. Tian, are you dissatisfied with our new Tea Pavilion? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 847. She wants to subdue people with virtue. As soon as he said this, the two of them who had wanted to speak immediately choked. Gu Yundong was still smiling. In fact, she really wanted to get someone to take them out. How much business had their troubles delayed the shop? It would be easy to take them out. But she couldn't. She ran a shop. There were so many people watching here. How could she use violence? If she gave people the impression that her shop was fierce and would chase customers out when things didn't go their way, others wouldn't dare to come. Therefore, she wanted to convince people with virtue. She asked again, do you have any dissatisfaction with our new Tea Pavilion? Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian suddenly came back to their senses and hurriedly shook their heads. No, we are not dissatisfied with the new Tea Pavilion. We are just dissatisfied with her. Who would dare to be dissatisfied with the new Tea Pavilion? However, they were indeed arguing and fighting in new Tea Pavilion. The two of them suddenly reacted and instantly broke out in cold sweat. Gu Yundong continued to smile. Oh, they had a tacit understanding. Even their words were the same. Since you don't have any dissatisfaction, why don't you calm down and talk about it slowly? Arguing hurts the mind. If you get angry too much, it's easy to get old. You two ladies are both young, beautiful, and outstanding. It's not worth getting angry over such a small matter, right? Just treat it as giving face to new Tea Pavilion. Sit down and talk slowly, okay? Gu Yundong gave them a way out and the two of them left. Now that they had woken up, they finally understood where they were. This was Madame Dea's place. A family like theirs did not dare to cause trouble. Therefore, although she still looked angry, she did not argue anymore. Seeing this, Gu Yundong turned to Wei Lan and said, bring the two madams to the room and serve 2 cups of osmanthus tea to calm down. It was naturally not appropriate to solve the problem in front of everyone. Yes. Wei Lan secretly heaved a sigh of relief and quickly led the two of them to the side room. The two old women also let go. Only then did Gu Yundong say to the remaining people, we've disturbed everyone today. Please forgive me. In order to apologize to everyone, I got someone to prepare some trinkets and let everyone bring them back later. Don't stop coming again because of such a small matter. She spoke eloquently and promised to give him something. Although it might not be worth much, this attitude made people feel very comfortable. Not to mention that they didn't dare to really blame new Tea Pavilion, but they had come over to drink tea and rest when they were disturbed. Their good mood was gone, so they naturally had a grudge. What's more, there was no lack of madams with husbands or sons in high positions present. They did not have to give Madame Dai face. They only pursued this quiet and comfortable environment. Gu Yundong's words really made the madams who were about to leave stop. To be honest, the refreshments here were really delicious and novel. They didn't know what the trinkets were, but they were actually looking forward to it. Gu Yundong asked the round-faced girl to clean up the place first before she excused herself and left. As soon as she left, the people in the hall suddenly reacted. This girl. Who was she? Was she a new employee in this shop? But her clothes didn't look like it. On the other hand, Xiao Yi was stunned for a moment before she hurriedly caught up with Gu Yundong. Stop right there. Who are you? Who asked you to be in charge of our shop? You even gave us trinkets. You're really... Gu Yundong turned her head abruptly and scanned her face with her sharp and cold gaze. Shut up. I'll settle the score with you later. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 848. Listen to me. Xiao Yi was stunned by her cold gaze and stood rooted to the ground. She had only dared to speak ill of others behind their backs. Even if she chased the guests away, it was only because her heart was too arrogant for a moment. It was her first time doing it. Now that Gu Yundong was looking at her, she felt inexplicably flustered. Gu Yundong had already walked into the room. As expected, Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Yu sat on two sides and did not speak to each other. Wei Lan persuaded them softly and poured them tea. When they saw Gu Yundong enter, they immediately turned their heads away. Just now, Wei Lan had already said that this person was the owner of New Tea Pavilion. They had met Madame Dai and Ye Shuang before. This was indeed the first time they had seen this boss Gu, who was rumored to not even have come on the day of the opening. Gu Yundong sat down in front of the two of them and smiled. All right, there's no one else here. You can tell me what happened. Mrs. Tian was the first to speak. Boss Gu, I'm not an unreasonable person. No one wants to cause trouble for New Tea Pavilion. It's just that Mrs. Yu is too much. Not only did she occupy my position, but she also mocked me. Her words are too unpleasant. Mrs. Yu sneered. What an interesting thing to say. That seat isn't yours. If you hadn't come to find trouble with me first, I wouldn't have bothered with you. But you're usually on the second floor. You're clearly... Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel again, Gu Yundong waved her hand. Stop. Since both of you think that you have a point, why don't you listen to me? The two of them closed their mouths. Gu Yundong smiled and said, Mrs. Tian, every seat in New Tea Pavilion is prepared for all the guests. There is indeed no specific seat for anyone. Of course, I can understand that you come often and are already used to that seat. But Mrs. Tian, have you ever thought that you can change to another place and see other scenery? The second floor is not bad, and the rooms at the back are not bad either. You might not know this, but not to mention the second floor, even those rooms have their own scenery. If we change to a different one every day, when others ask about New Tea Pavilion later, Mrs. Tian will have something to say. Perhaps others will envy you, right? Mrs. Tian was a little unhappy when she heard her say that she was in the wrong. The last sentence stunned her for a moment. A thought flashed through her mind. That's right, not many people came to New Tea Pavilion. She could come every day because her husband held power and her dowry was generous. The other sisters-in-law and concubines in the family, and even her mother-in-law, had only come twice. In the future, when the family asked, her mother-in-law would tell them how spacious and novel the hall was, how sweet and delicious the milk tea was, and how delicious and fresh the snacks were. After she finished speaking, no one would ask Mrs. Tian anymore. If she went through all the places in New Tea Pavilion, wouldn't she be surrounded like a star? In the end, she was just being vain. Seeing that she did not speak, Gu Yundong smiled and turned to look at another person. Mrs. Yu, why aren't you sitting on the second floor today? Mrs. Yu was stunned. Actually, she had been thinking about Gu Yundong's words just now. They seemed to make sense. Hearing her question, she glanced at Mrs. Tian and said, I was originally on the second floor, but there was someone I didn't like on the second floor today, so I came downstairs. There were many people downstairs at that time. It seems that that place is not bad. Who knew that Mrs. Tian often sat there? She usually came early and went straight to the second floor. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. There are so many people who don't get along with you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 849. It's over. Gu Yundong nodded, indicating that she understood. Then she asked, "Have you never said this to Mrs. Tian? What's there to say? Am I very familiar with her? I can't even be bothered to look at her. She walked in front of me perfectly fine and even blocked my light." Mrs. Yu rolled her eyes, as if Mrs. Tian was a dirty thing. With this gaze, even ordinary people would feel unhappy, let alone Mrs. Tian, who had a grudge against her. Mrs. Tian's anger was instantly ignited again. "You can't be bothered to look at me? Then I walked in front of you and you mocked me? If your words weren't so unpleasant, would I have quarreled with you? You were clearly the one who provoked me first." Seeing that they were about to argue again, Gu Yundong said, "Look, this is actually a very small matter. Mrs. Yu, don't say too much. If Mrs. Tian takes 2 steps, such a thing won't happen at all. What's the big deal? If I don't have a seat, I'll change it. If the 2 of them don't get along, they want talk at most, right? I know you were impulsive, but if you quarrel in front of so many madams and young ladies, I'm afraid the entire Xuanhe prefecture will be in an uproar in less than half a day. It's not worth it to implicate your reputation and your family's reputation because of such a small matter." The 2 of them stopped talking. Actually, they had calmed down and knew that they had done something wrong just now. Even if they wanted to quarrel, they could not quarrel in New Tea Pavilion. Although their family was only an ordinary rich family, it was really embarrassing for them to scold each other in public like a shrew in the market. They would probably not be able to answer to their husband and mother-in-law when they returned. The 2 of them thought it through and felt that what Gu Yundong said made sense. Seeing that the 2 of them had calmed down, Gu Yundong smiled and said, "Can we just let this matter go? It's not easy for our new tea pavilion that has just opened for business. Take it as giving new tea pavilion face. I'll get someone to offer you some trinkets later." She gave them a way out, and Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian immediately followed suit. They smiled and said, "Thank you, Boss Gu." Then, the 2 of them chatted awkwardly in a gentle tone and let this matter pass. Gu Yundong smiled. "Isn't that good? Damn it, it was not easy to be a female director of mediation. She was so tired that she was sweating. She might as well carry them out." Gu Yundong felt that she had to hire someone who was capable in this area. "Have some tea." The 2 of them drank a cup of tea. After a moment of silence, they finally stood up and walked out of the room. Gu Yundong was the first to come out. Many people in the hall were waiting absent-mindedly. They craned their necks to look at the backyard. Especially that Miss Bao. She was standing behind the big screen, waiting to see the situation immediately. Xiaoyi wanted to go to the private room to take a look a few times, but she suppressed it in the end. The hall was still a little chaotic now. She still had to bring people to clean up and appease the guests. She could only suppress the dissatisfaction in her heart first. With Wei Lan in the private room, if anything really happened, it would be Wei Lan's responsibility. Thinking of this, Xiaoyi was not in a hurry. When Gu Yundong came out, everyone in the hall looked over. Miss Bao took a few steps forward and asked softly, "How did it go?" Gu Yundong moved to the side and Mrs. Yu walked out from behind her. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 850. Trinkets. When everyone saw this, they were surprised. Oh, the 2 of them really stopped arguing. Not only did they stop arguing, but they also seemed to be able to talk calmly. They looked quite friendly when they walked together. Miss Bao's heart was itching. "Miss Gu, what did you tell them?" "Nothing much. It's not like the 2 madams are unreasonable people. This is just a misunderstanding. Once the misunderstanding is resolved, won't everything be fine?" Mrs. Yu nodded. "Yes, it was just a misunderstanding. I'm really sorry for disturbing everyone. I was just being impulsive. Please don't take it to heart. The madams and young ladies present waved their hands and said that they were fine. In any case, they did not lose anything. They had even watched a show. Later they could chat with others. Miss Bao did not get any useful information and sighed regretfully. Then she seemed to have thought of something and asked curiously, "By the way, you said that you would give us something. What is it?" As soon as she said this, an older woman beside her glared at her. "How can you be so unruly? Who asks for a gift? I'm curious. Aren't you all curious?" That person should be Miss Bao's elder. Although there was blame in her words, it was mostly teasing. On the other hand, when Miss Bao asked that question, a few people who liked to join in the fun asked, "Yes, we're really quite curious. Miss, what exactly is it? Let us see it." "All right, I'll go get it now," Gu Yundong said with a smile. She also knew that the two of them definitely did not want to stay here anymore, so she nodded at them. "Please wait for a while." She had agreed to give the gifts to them. With that, Gu Yundong turned around and walked towards the storeroom at the back. She had the key to the storeroom in her hand. Madame Dai had given it to her when she went to the Dai residence a few days ago. There were naturally no small gifts in the storeroom, but they were in Gu Yundong's spatial storage. Actually, it wasn't anything special. It was just her paintings. It was mainly because she had too many things in her space, but she could not take most of them out to use. What she could take out was not enough to offer so many madams and young ladies outside. Except painting. Now that she had the conditions, she could make one painting a day almost every day when she was free. As time passed, wouldn't there be many paintings in the space? Moreover, it would not seem rude to give this. Hence, when Gu Yundong arrived at the storeroom, she found a larger tray and placed all the paintings in her space inside. Some paintings were simple and some were complicated. There were all kinds of flowers, plants, mountains, rivers, bustling streets, alleys, and food. Gu Yundong's mind was filled with imagination. She drew everything. At this moment, these paintings were all rolled up and tied with a red string. When placed on the tray, they looked a little high-end. Gu Yundong carried the tray out of the storeroom and Wei Lan happened to rush over. She handed the tray to her. Wei Lan followed behind her and said, "Boss, I don't know where Xiaoyi went." Gu Yundong paused for a moment before continuing to walk forward. "Does she know that I'm the boss of New Tea Pavilion? If she knew, she might really escape in fear." Wei Lan shook her head. "I don't think so." She had wanted to find Xiaoyi and tell her about Gu Yundong's identity. It was more or less a way for her to be mentally prepared. As they spoke, the two of them returned to the hall. Most of the people's eyes were on her, but Gu Yundong's gaze was on Mrs. Tian and the woman beside her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 851. Can you get out? Where did this woman come from? Why didn't I see her before? As Gu Yundong walked forward, she asked Wei Lan, "Who is this?" Wei Lan said, "She came with Mrs. Tian. She seems to be Mrs. Tian's sister-in-law." As she spoke, she suddenly lowered her voice. "I remember now. This sister-in-law seems to be Mrs. Yes concubine's sister-in-law. She also married the eldest son of the Tian family's concubine. In that case, the two of them were in-laws?" Gu Yundong frowned slightly. Just as she was about to walk to Mrs. Tian's side, she suddenly realized that Mrs. Tian, who had been comforted just now, had become irritable again. She looked at Mrs. Yu with uncontrollable anger. The woman beside her kept persuading her. "Forget it, sister-in-law. It's not like you don't know her personality. Let's just take a step back. Anyway, I've already gotten used to what happened at home in the past." "Get used to it?" Mrs. Tian sneered. "You're a concubine's daughter, but I'm not. I'm the proper wife of the Tian family. Why should I let her?" A trace of anger flashed across the woman's face, but she quickly regained her composure and sighed. "You're right. I implicated you. I shouldn't have followed you here. She provoked us when she saw us coming. She was actually targeting me. Otherwise, even if you didn't come, she would still find trouble with me. It has nothing to do with you. Sister-in-law, you don't have to take the responsibility. It's just that since things have come to this, the rest doesn't matter. I'm just afraid that it won't be easy to explain to your family when you go back. This matter will definitely spread everywhere. I'm worried that the rumors outside will be disadvantageous to you. Gu Yundong's face turned ashen when he heard that. All right, she knew that such a small matter would cause such a ruckus. The two rich ladies were arguing without caring about the occasion. It seemed like there was a troublemaker here. It wasn't easy for her to persuade them. She just went to the warehouse to get something. Was the fire starting to rise again? With her bad temper, it seemed like it would not work to convince people with virtue. Gu Yundong stepped forward and patted the woman's shoulder. The latter turned around and looked at her in surprise. Gu Yundong was still smiling, but her words shocked everyone present. Can you get the hell out of here? The woman's expression changed drastically. She suddenly stood up. What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't care if you want to sow discord between Mrs. Tian and Mrs. Yu, but please leave this door before you speak. Mrs. Tian looked at her in surprise. The woman met her gaze and quickly denied it. I didn't. What do you mean by sowing discord? I'm just worried about sister-in-law. Gu Yundong did not have the time to argue with her. What did the Tian and Yu families have to do with her? The sisters-in-law started fighting. However, if they wanted to fight, they had to go home. You want to use our new Tea Pavilion as a raft on the spot? Dream on. Gu Yundong sneered. Do you think everyone is a fool? Do you think I don't have a temper? Get lost, Wei Lan. Remember her. She's not allowed to come again. It was just a shop, but it had actually become a tool for others to fight openly and covertly. It would be strange if Gu Yundong had a good expression. This woman thought that she had invited the two of them in with a good attitude just now because she did not dare to offend the guests or something. No matter what, the prefecture magistrate's wife was backing them up here. When it was time to be stubborn, Gu Yundong would definitely not lower her voice and be nice. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 852. Draw it yourself. The woman's face turned pale. After a while, she looked at Gu Yundong with tears in her eyes and said, How can you malign me like this? You treat my sincerity as heartless. I know that I'm a concubine's daughter. You all look down on me. As she spoke, she covered her tears and ran out. Gu Yundong did not even turn around. She looked up at Mrs. Tian, who seemed to be deep in thought. She was also very speechless in her heart. She did not expect Mrs. Tian to be easy to provoke. Her temper was too easily ignited. On the other hand, Mrs. Yu had been watching from the side. At this moment, she walked over and thanked Gu Yundong. Thank you. Actually, I also felt that this quarrel was a little strange previously. It turns out that there was a villain causing trouble. Someone beside them whispered, That's right. When you guys were arguing, that person kept standing far away. Mrs. Tian immediately felt a little awkward. At this moment, she had gradually regained her senses. She immediately smiled dryly at Gu Yundong and said, It's my fault for not recognizing people well and causing new Tea Pavilion to suffer. I'm sorry, everyone. Since she had a good attitude, Gu Yundong naturally would not treat her coldly. Anyway, it was fine as long as she did not cause trouble in new Tea Pavilion. But it was impossible for Gu Yundong to still have a smile on her face. She asked Wei Lan to bring the tray over and handed them 2 paintings. This is a small gift from New Tea Pavilion. I hope the two of you like it. What's this? Miss Bao couldn't help but ask curiously. Gu Yundong took a roll and handed it over. Miss Bao blinked. For me. Gu Yundong thought about it and took it back. Hey, wait, I didn't say I didn't want it. Why did you take it back? Gu Yundong smiled. It's not that I don't want to give it to you. I just want you to draw it yourself. She placed the painting back on the tray and pushed the tray forward. These are all paintings. Take it as a gift from me to everyone. However, the scenes and items drawn here are all different. Some are simple, and some are complicated. The paintings are all rolled up, so I don't know what's on the paintings. Why don't everyone take a look and treat it as fun? Miss Bao's eyes lit up when she heard that. Alright, alright, alright. This is interesting. The others also walked over curiously. The gift is actually a painting. This is quite elegant. It's more like letting us draw it ourselves. That will depend on everyone's luck. My hands are itching. Can I be the first to draw it? Hey, that won't do. Who doesn't know that you're famous for being lucky? I think you should be the last. The person in front covered her mouth and laughed. You said that I'm lucky. Even if I'm the last, I might still draw the best. Everyone laughed, and the atmosphere in the hall instantly became lively and harmonious. On the other side, Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian lowered their heads and left quietly when no one was paying attention. However, when they walked out of the door, they were suddenly stunned when they saw a person in the carriage at the door. Immediately after, the two of them smiled dryly and hurriedly greeted the person before leaving. As for whether they would come to New Tea Pavilion in the future, they did not know. In short, after Mrs. Tian returned, there would probably be no peace at home. Gu Yundong naturally knew that they had left, but the atmosphere in the hall became more and more lively. Miss Bao was the first to draw a painting since she was the closest. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 853. No heart to resist. Someone couldn't help but move closer to her. Quick, take a look at what's on it. Miss Bao was inexplicably nervous, especially since everyone's attention was on her. It made her feel as if she was holding a fragile item worth 10,000 gold coins. After a long while, she held her breath and carefully pulled off the red string tied to the painting, spreading it out bit by bit. Halfway through, she suddenly rolled it up again. It made the hearts of the others standing beside her skip a beat. Gu Yundong could not help but rub her forehead. It's just a painting. Do you have to do this? Is there too little entertainment? After a while, Miss Bao opened the painting again. In the next moment, she let out a wow, and her face was filled with obvious joy. Those who were sitting further away heard this and became more curious. However, they were no longer young ladies. They still had to be more dignified. However, there were still young ladies of similar age who exclaimed, "So cute." Gu Yundong glanced at it. Oh, it was the Q picture. She had drawn it when she saw a large group of children flying kites in Yongfu village last time. She suddenly had an idea. They were all big-headed and small-bodied. They were pulling the kite string in their hands as groups. There were also some who sat at the side and watched. Some were eating with food in their hands. Some were teary-eyed and wanted to play but didn't dare to. Some were playing pranks. There were also two children fighting with two stalks of grass sticking out from their heads. Their postures were all different and vivid. However, without exception, they all had big eyes and small mouths. They were even cuter than dolls, making one's heart tremble. Women had no intention of resisting such a cute thing. Not only did Miss Bao like it, but even the people beside her were the same. Someone asked Gu Yundong, "Are the other paintings all like this?" Gu Yundong shook her head. "No, there are only 3 or 4 of these." Everyone was a little disappointed, but they still rubbed their palms together, hoping that they could get one of these 3 or 4 paintings. There were even people who discussed with Miss Bao and wanted to exchange with her. Gu Yundong asked everyone to sit down. "I'll get Wei Lan to bring a tray over. Everyone will have a share. One by one." Although everyone was anxious, they all sat back down. As expected, Wei Lan walked past the crowd with a tray. At this moment, be it the guests on the second floor or the people in the private rooms, they all heard the commotion and came over. There were also a few children among them, but they were all restrained by their elders and did not make a fuss. Soon, someone drew a painting and opened it hopefully. Unfortunately, there was no such painting that she wanted. She was a little disappointed. However, soon after she became slightly happy. This seems to be a charcoal drawing that's been popular recently? Is it a charcoal drawing? This drawing is too lifelike. Look, there's a shadow here. The people around them all looked over, including Miss Bao. The one in her hand was not a charcoal drawing. When she heard that it was a recent trend, a madam said, "I've heard of this charcoal drawing. My son has been learning it recently. Sigh, if only I could draw it later." "How is this a trinket?" This is clearly something good. Isn't it? Discussions broke out in the hall. Everyone looked at Gu Yundong in amazement. The people in the carriage outside the door had been watching silently. One of them could not take it anymore and said unhappily, "Madam, did I say anything wrong? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 854. She's the third boss. I don't know where she came from. It's fine if she became the master of our new tea pavilion without permission, but she even became the master of the place. Wei Lan just had to listen to her as if she was the master and let her win people over. The person who spoke was Xiao Yi, who had disappeared earlier. At this moment, she was standing beside the carriage, and the person sitting in the carriage was Madame Dai. Xiao Yi originally wanted to stop Wei Lan, but when she thought about how Wei Lan had been going against her today, she felt especially uncomfortable. In New Tea Pavilion, the person with the highest chance of competing with her for power was Wei Lan. As for Su Qing, she didn't care at all. If she took this opportunity to make Madame Dai's impression of Wei Lan worse, wouldn't that be killing two birds with one stone? Coincidentally, Madame Dai had actually come this morning. Xiao Yi knew that she would go to a friend's house not far from here in the afternoon, so she simply ran over to look for her. When she returned, she happened to see Gu Yundong scolding Mrs. Tian's sister-in-law. She even chased away our new Tea Pavilion's guest and directly said that that person was sowing discord and offended Mrs. Tian and Mrs. Yu. This is too bad for our new Tea Pavilion's reputation. Madam, you can't let her off. The more Xiao Yi spoke, the angrier she became. However, she did not hear Madame Dai's voice for a long time and was a little puzzled. However, when she looked up, she realized that Madame Dai was smiling. Xiao Yi was a little stunned. Madam. Madame Dai finally glanced at her. Sowing discord? Isn't it what you're doing now? Xiao Yi's face instantly turned pale. She hurriedly lowered her head. This servant doesn't dare. Madame Dai looked at her with disappointment in her eyes and did not continue. She only got the maidservant beside her to help her out of the carriage and walked towards New Tea Pavilion with a smile. Usually, she would have noticed it as soon as she arrived, but at this moment, her attention was focused on the paintings. No one noticed her arrival for a long time. It was not until she reached the counter that someone finally said in surprise, "Madame Dai, you're here?" Gu Yundong also turned around and smiled. As Madame Dai walked towards the guests, an older lady said, "Madame Dai, where did you get these paintings? Doesn't your heart ache to send them out like this?" "I didn't take those paintings out. If she doesn't feel sorry for it, why should I feel sorry for it?" That person was stunned. He glanced at Gu Yundong and asked hesitantly, "Where did Madame Dai find this female shopkeeper? She's so generous and treats those as trinkets. She gave them away just like that." Gu Yundong was dressed differently from Wei Lan and the rest, so everyone guessed that her status might be higher. "Yes, you have good taste." Madame Dai became smug. She walked to Gu Yundong's side and patted her hand. She said to the guests, "Are you envious? But this is not the shopkeeper of our new Tea Pavilion. She is a boss of New Tea Pavilion." Boss. This was the boss of New Tea Pavilion? How was that possible? Although they had long heard that there were 3 bosses in New Tea Pavilion, the third one was too mysterious. They had never seen her before and she did not even come when the shop opened. As time passed, there were rumors that there was no third owner at New Tea Pavilion at all. There was only Madame Dai and Ye Shuang. However, they did not understand why those people had to fabricate a boss. They didn't expect that there really was one. Moreover, she had appeared in front of them at this moment. She was young but plenty of methods. She had even given them a trinket just now. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 855. You're actually such a Madame Dai. Everyone present looked surprised. Many people had already re-evaluated Gu Yundong's status in their hearts. Miss Bao was even more shocked. She actually didn't guess. Yes, Nye Shuang had said that the third boss of New Tea Pavilion had the surname Gu. Moreover, She came and went in the hall as she pleased and chatted happily. Why didn't she think in that direction? Miss Bao was extremely vexed. To think she said that she knew everything about the prefectural city. Her face hurt. However, among the people present, one of them was even more shocked by Madame Day's words. Her face turned pale, and her legs were so weak that she could not stand. She sat on the ground. Why? How could that be? Was she the boss? The boss of the Gu family? Then why didn't she say anything? Was she deliberately watching her make a fool of herself? Wei Lan was the first to see it. Seeing this, she sighed inwardly and walked over to help her. Get up first. Later, go and apologize to Boss Gu. Perhaps Boss Gu won't make things difficult for you on account of Madame Dai. Xiaoyi suddenly pinched the back of her hand. Her neatly trimmed nails still scratched a bloody mark on the back of her hand. Hiss! Wei Lan cried out in pain. Xiaoyi, let go. However, Xiaoyi raised her head and looked at her with hatred in her eyes. You did it on purpose. You know that she's the boss of the Gu family, right? That's why you worked so hard to please her, but you deliberately didn't tell me. I didn't. You did. Xiaoyi grabbed her hand. You watched as I spoke ill of her behind her back. You didn't tell me anything and waited for this moment, right? Wei Lan, you're too sinister. You're simply crazy. Whether you believe it or not, I really didn't know that she was the owner of the Gu family. After I found out, I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't find you. You went to look for Madame Dai. Wei Lan pulled her hand back. Looking at Xiaoyi, who only had resentment in her eyes and did not know how to repent, she completely lost the desire to talk to her. She stood up and said coldly, You're on your own. Then, she walked towards Gu Yundong. At this moment, Madame Dai pulled Gu Yundong and introduced her formally again. This is the third boss of New Tea Pavilion, Gu Yundong. She is very busy, so she did not have time to come here after opening. If we had not written to her to urge her, she might not have come. She is so heartless to throw this shop to us. There was intimacy in her words, and she sounded even more serious. Everyone present could tell that this boss Gu had a very high status in New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong said helplessly, I'm not as heartless as Auntie says. Look, I came immediately after you sent me a letter. See how loyal I am to you. Madame Dai leaned closer to her and whispered, If you're really loyal, teach me how to put on your makeup another day. Gu Yundong was speechless. You're actually like this, Madame Dai. She smiled and nodded. All right. That's good. Madame Dai was instantly satisfied. Since you're here today, I have something to tell you. Let's find a room. Gu Yundong nodded. Madame Dai greeted everyone and excused herself. The others had the painting in their hands. They knew that the two of them had something to say, so they did not ask them to stay. Miss Bao wanted to know more about Gu Yundong. Unfortunately, she was glared at by her elders, so she could only find another opportunity. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 856. You have good eyes. Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked towards the backyard. However, when they reached the screen, she stopped in her tracks. Madame Dai asked, What's wrong? I'll introduce some people to Auntie. Gu Yundong pointed at Yunshu and the others who were sitting on chairs and talking to someone not far away. They had agreed to let them wait in the room, but it seemed like they could not wait any longer. They had already come to the hall. Not only was he here, but he and Yuanzhi were also playing with two other children of similar age. The four of them leaned on the table and looked at a painting. Eldest Aunt Gu was watching them from the side. The other two children's families were also present. However, perhaps because they could not speak to Eldest Aunt Gu, they remained silent and drank tea and ate. When Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked over, the two madams stood up. Gu Yundong nodded at them before introducing Gu Dafeng to Madame Dai. This is my aunt, Gu Dafeng. Madame Dai was surprised. You found her? She knew that Gu Yundong was looking for her eldest aunt and uncle. The last time Dai Wenhua went back, he did not mention this to her. That was why she was so surprised. Gu Yundong smiled. Yes, I did. Then, she introduced Yunshu and Yuanzhi. Madame Dai looked at the two obedient young kids and could not help but say, "Are your younger siblings so lovable?" Yunshu nodded. "Auntie, you have keen eyes." Madame Dai was stunned. Then, she covered the corners of her mouth and smiled. She said to Gu Yundong, as expected, "He's your younger brother. It's obvious that he learned it from you." No, she was wronged. Gu Yundong held her forehead and instructed Yunshu and the rest to have fun. She had something to discuss with Madame Dai. Eldest Aunt Gu said, "Go ahead. I'll take care of them." The two of them left the hall and went to the room at the back. As soon as they left, the two madams who were originally not talking to Eldest Aunt Gu immediately came over curiously and asked, "Is Boss Gu your niece?" There were also people who heard this and came over to inquire. When Yunshu and Yuanzhi saw this, they felt that something was wrong and hurriedly pulled Eldest Aunt Gu back to the room. On the other hand, the two children had become familiar with Yunshu and followed her with their short legs. The child's family was speechless. However, the people in the hall did not quiet down because of their departure. Instead, the discussion became more and more intense. Still, no one knew which family Gu Yundong belonged to. After some guesses, there was no result. Even so, they all liked the paintings she took out. Although some people were unlucky and only drew the simplest ones, it did not stop them from admiring it. Initially, Gu Yundong thought that some people would lose interest in leaving New Tea Pavilion after the matter with the two madams was over. But now, no one was willing to leave. Gu Yundong was very satisfied with this scene, and so was Madame Dai. When the two of them entered the room, Madame Dai heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I heard about Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian. It's all thanks to you being present today. Otherwise, if we let them continue arguing, we wouldn't be able to do business." She frowned. "I'm afraid they won't have the face to come again in the future." Gu Yundong had also guessed that Mrs. Yu might come again, but Mrs. Tian might not. "Auntie, I think we lack a shopkeeper." Madame Dai clapped her hands. "I was just about to tell you about this." As soon as she finished speaking, a sobbing voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Madame Dai, Boss Gu, I was wrong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 857. Returning to her original form. The sudden sound stunned the two of them. The maidservant standing behind Madame Dai frowned and bowed for instructions. "Madam, can you let me go out and deal with it?" Madame Dai looked at Gu Yundong. "What are your plans?" "Auntie, you can make the decision. If I go, I'm afraid she won't be convinced." Madame Dai nodded and instructed the maidservant behind her, Yunshu. "Go ahead and let her understand what she did wrong." "Yes." Yunshu nodded at the two of them and opened the door of the room. She looked at Xiao Yi, who was kneeling outside the door. This room was specially spared by Gu Yundong. It was in a corner beside the kitchen warehouse and was used as an office. It was quite far from the room where the other guests were and was not easy to see. Therefore, Xiao Yi's commotion did not disturb the other guests. Seeing Yunshu, Xiao Yi hurriedly knelt down and took a few steps forward. "Sister Yunshu, please help me plead with Madam. I was wrong. I was really wrong." Yunshu looked down at her. "What did you do wrong?" I didn't know Boss Gu's identity. I was disrespectful to Boss Gu. I deserve to die." Yunshu shook her head in disappointment. She still did not know what was wrong. Even if Boss Gu didn't reveal her identity, she's still a guest. There's no reason for New Tea Pavilion to chase guests out. Xiao Yi felt wronged and cried uncontrollably. "Yes, I was too anxious. I just heard the two young masters say that they wanted to stay here until closing time. They also wanted to tour all the rooms here, so I thought wrongly." "Were you thinking in the wrong direction?" Yunshu sneered. When New Tea Pavilion first opened, many people had the same idea. They wanted to see the other rooms in the backyard, but how did Madame and Miss Nye deal with them? "Have you forgotten?" Xiao Yi's face turned pale. Yunshu said, "Madame has repeatedly reminded you that if you encounter a guest with such a request, you have to tactfully explain to the other party that this is not in line with the rules. If you encounter someone who is pestering you endlessly, You have to forcefully carry them out. But what about you? Not to mention that Boss Gu did not make a request in front of you. Even if she did, the first thing you should do is not to chase the guest away. Xiaoyi was completely speechless. She was just thinking that she was with Madame Dai. Such a small matter. Yunshu sighed in her heart and shook her head. You don't have to stay in New Tea Pavilion in the future. Go pack up and return to the Dai residence in a while. Xiaoyi suddenly raised her head and immediately kowtowed on the ground to beg for mercy. No, Sister Yunshu, I was wrong. Madam, Boss Gu, I was wrong. Please don't chase me away. How many people wanted to come to New Tea Pavilion but could not? Madam had once said that if they could do it well in New Tea Pavilion, in the future, when the shop opened elsewhere, old people like them could be promoted as shopkeepers. At that time, they would be much better than the maidservants and grannies in the residence. If there was someone with outstanding ability, Madam would even strip them of their slave status and live a glorious life. This was a job that many people would envy. Xiaoyi knew that even Yunshu, who was in front of her, was tempted. Now, she had finally reached this step with great difficulty. Yet she was going to be beaten back to her original state? No, that's not right. It's worse than the original. She had already been abandoned by Madam. Even if she returned to the Dai residence, it was impossible for her to do the same job as before. She would probably be exiled to the manor and die of old age there. Xiaoyi cried bitterly, but Yunshu frowned. She found two old women from the kitchen who had come out to watch the show and quickly pulled her down. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. However, she did not have such connections. She still had to rely on Madame Dai or Nie Shuang. Auntie, since you're talking about the shopkeeper, do you have someone in mind? At the mention of this, Madame Dai's face finally lit up. There's someone. I visited a friend of mine today because of her. My friend's family is in the capital. A few days ago, a nanny came back from the capital and said that she was here to retire. In fact, she didn't want to get involved in the disputes of the capital's main family. This nanny has some ability. The young lady of that family learned the rules from her. She has really seen the world. I finally convinced her to come to this shop tomorrow to take a look. When the time comes, I'll try my best to let her stay. A nanny from the capital? Although she's here to retire, she's not old. She doesn't need to do anything in this shop. She's just here to oversee it. With her around, such a thing will definitely not happen today. When I was young, I was also in the capital and had to receive a few pointers from her. As long as she's willing to come, it won't be a problem. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. The two children were overjoyed. Even Eldest Aunt Gus's eyes were shining. After walking around, the sky was already a little dark. Only then did Gu Yundong bring Yunshu and Yuanzhi, who were still extremely excited, as well as Eldest Aunt Gu, who seemed to have a certain goal in her eyes and was becoming more and more determined, back to the small courtyard. As soon as Eldest Aunt Gu entered the house, she could not wait to return to her room. She said that she wanted to tidy up the wooden carvings. She could clearly feel how successful Gu Yundong was today. The business of the two shops was booming. If Yundong could make something out of nothing, so could she. Even if she couldn't compare to Yundong, as long as she worked hard, she could also have her own shop in the future. Her life would definitely get better and better. At this moment, Gu Dafeng's goal was exceptionally firm. The next day, Yunshu and Yuanzhi followed Gu Dajiang to Tianhai Academy and saw the stone wall engraved with names. As Gu Dajiang was leading them, the two of them even entered the academy. After seeing this academy that had 100 years of history, they were overwhelmed with emotions the entire day. Meanwhile, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shui Tao to the milk tea shop again. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 860. This person is good. Nie Shuang was also here. She was the first to arrive and was already eating in the hall. Madame Dai went to fetch Madame Chiu. As soon as they entered, everyone in New Tea Pavilion was present. It was Gu Yundong's first time seeing Madame Chiu. How should she put it? Madame Dai was right. Madame Chiu was good. When she pulled a long face, even Gu Yundong felt a little uneasy. Her hands and feet were placed very properly, and she did not dare to look around. It was exactly the same feeling as when she met the dean in elementary school in her previous life. It was simply sour and refreshing. If she was standing in the crowd like this, who would dare to quarrel in New Tea Pavilion? Who would dare? Anyway, Gu Yundong did not dare. However, she stopped pulling a long face and only smiled slightly. The expression on her face instantly became approachable and kind. Even the waiter of New Tea Pavilion dared to joke with her. Most importantly, Madame Chiu was multi-talented. She was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was omnipotent in brewing tea and making incense. Even if a noble old lady came, Madame Chiu could accompany her for most of the day and not bring any awkwardness. Stay. Such a person had to stay. However, Gu Yundong did not show too much enthusiasm. Madame Chiu was obviously very opinionated. If you were too enthusiastic, she would not be too happy. She introduced the situation of the milk tea shop as usual. Gu Yundong answered Madame Chiu's questions in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. After walking around, the two of them chatted the most. There were specializations in the industry. Madame Chiu did not know much about business, but she knew how to read people, teach people, read accounts, and get along with customers. It was enough. After Madame Chiu finished asking, she told them to consider it. Nie Shuang was a little disappointed, but Gu Yundong and Madame Dai's eyes lit up. When Madame Dai brought her back, she couldn't help but say, "My milk tea shop will definitely be good in the future, right? Then you're lucky to have met such a scheming little girl. Nanny, are you coming tomorrow?" Madame Chiu sat in the carriage and closed her eyes in silence for a while before saying with a smile, "Yes, it's good to work in another environment." Madame Dai became happy. After sending Madame Chiu back, she returned to the milk tea shop and announced such good news. Nie Shuang's eyes lit up. Although Gu Yundong was also happy, she looked much calmer than expected. However, before she left, she specially said to Su Qing, "Learn more from Madame Chiu in the future, especially when it comes to how she treats others. It will be good for you." From the looks of it, Madame Dai would definitely open a milk tea shop elsewhere in the future. Now that the prefecture magistrate Dai was being placed in an important position, he would probably be transferred back to the capital by the emperor in 2 years. Madame Dai might have already found a suitable shop in the capital. If Su Qing learned more, even if she didn't go to the capital in the future, she could still go to other county cities to be a master. Gu Yundong returned to the small courtyard and realized that eldest Aunt Gu was still in her room. She seemed to have been in the house for the entire day. Gu Yundong stood outside the window and looked, only to find that she was muttering to the wooden carvings. She did not know what she was thinking. Her uncle sat on a chair beside her and shushed her softly. On the third day, Gu Yundong had just woken up when Gu Dafeng carried her bag and prepared to leave. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment and quickly stopped her. "Aunt, where are you going? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 861. Let's do it today. Gu Dafeng looked at her bag in high spirits. "I'm going to the market to sell wooden carvings." "Now?" "Yes. I prepared for a day yesterday. I set a price for each wooden sculpture and memorized it. I'm prepared to do something big today." What she did not say was that she had rehearsed in her room for a long time yesterday. She had practiced how to receive guests, how to speak, and how to treat people who made things difficult for her. First of all, she had to smile. Gu Yundong had always been smiling when she treated the two quarreling madams that day. However, she could not be afraid and let others think that she was easy to bully. Gu Dafeng was a little regretful now. In the past, when Bien Han went to sell the wooden carvings, she did not go with him. Otherwise, she would not be so inexperienced. Gu Yundong did not expect her to be so well prepared. At this moment, if given a lever, she seemed to be able to prop up an entire planet. She smiled and stepped forward. "I'll go with eldest aunt." No need, no need. How can I rely on you for everything? I'm already an adult and you're elder. I can't keep asking you to take care of me. I'll go myself. It's fine. If I can't sell them today, I can continue tomorrow. I'll slowly figure it out. It won't always fail to sell. Gu Yundong really had a good impression of eldest Aunt Gu. She thought about Gu Choyue and then looked at eldest Aunt Gu. She knew that old Gu was a blind fool. He did not value his eldest son and daughter who were really promising. He only knew how to torture them and specially dote on those useless people. It would be strange if he had a good ending. Then I'll send eldest aunt over. It's your first time going to the market, so you definitely don't know the way. By the time you find the place, it might be noon. There won't be any place for you to set up at the market. Gu Dafeng thought about it and agreed. All right, then bring me there. But we've agreed that you'll go after that. Of course. I'll come back after sending eldest aunt off. I guarantee that I won't even enter the market. I'll let eldest aunt do everything herself. Gu Dafeng smiled and followed her into the carriage. Tong Shui Tao drove them there. Gu Yundong was a woman of her word. When they arrived outside the market, she put Gu Dafeng down and waved goodbye to her. Gu Dafeng entered the market, but Gu Yundong did not leave. She asked Tong Shui Tao to watch the carriage and followed her. Yes, she was just curious about what eldest aunt would do. She was purely curious. Unbeknownst to Gu Dafeng, her tail had been behind her. When she reached the entrance of the market, she could not help but tighten her grip on her bag. After hesitating for a moment, she strode in. She remembered that Yundong had told her that the first seats in the market were the mother and daughter pair who sold flowers. The young lady's name was Xiao Yuan, and she was about 10 years old. Therefore, as soon as she entered, Gu Dafeng looked in that direction and indeed saw the stall with more than 20 bright potted plants in front of her. The person sitting behind the flowers with a small stool was a young lady. The young lady was watering the flowers with a kettle. She looked serious and obedient, just as Yundong had described. Gu Dafeng immediately became happy and walked up to them. The little girl looked up and immediately put on a smile. "Aunt, do you want to buy flowers?" Gu Dafeng shook her head and asked, "Is your name Xiao Yuan?" "Yes, Auntie knows me." Gu Dafeng's eyes lit up even more. Her happy expression made Xiao Yuan's mother, Madame Fan, who was arranging the flowers, immediately vigilant. She stood in front of Gu Dafeng and frowned. "What's the matter? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 862. First Aunt's Voice. Gu Dafeng was stunned and became a little nervous. Did they see through her because she was from the countryside? Did the people in the prefectural city not like her? No, Yundong had said that Xiao Yuan and her daughter were very friendly. Hence, she hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand. My niece said that you sell flowers here, so I came over to ask if it's true." Mrs. Fan was suspicious. "Your niece is... her surname is Gu. Do you still remember the girl who bought 20 pots of flowers for her mother last time?" Xiao Yuan immediately stood up happily. I remember. Is Sister Gu your niece?" "Yes, I'm her aunt." Madame Fan was also a little happy. Others might not remember, but Gu Yundong and the rest remembered very clearly. She was the first customer to buy 20 pots of flowers in one go, and she even helped them chase away Shopkeeper Pan. Ever since Shopkeeper Pan left, they had been selling flowers here smoothly. Now that she heard that the other party was her aunt, she quickly greeted her warmly. "So it's sister-in-law Gu. Are you here to buy something? What do you want to buy? I'll tell you where to go." No. I'm not buying anything. I'm here to sell something." Madame Fan was confused. Selling things? She could not help but look at the bag in her hand. Gu Dafeng coughed lightly and squatted down to open the bag. "Those are wooden carvings made by my husband. I want to sell them here." The moment the bag was opened, Xiao Yuan exclaimed, "They're so beautiful." Gu Dafeng took a small item and handed it to her. "This is for you." Xiao Yuan quickly rejected her. "No, no. Auntie, you're selling it. Take it. It's not difficult. I was originally going to give it to you." Gu Dafeng knew about Xiao Yuan and her daughter, so she had prepared one in advance. Bian Han had casually carved them, so they were not very complicated. They were very simple flowers. "Then I can't take it either. How about this? Accept this wooden flower and tell me what to pay attention to when setting up a stall here. I don't understand anything. Teach me. Take this as a payment for my hard work." Xiao Yuan looked at her mother. She liked the flower very much. Madame Fan thought about it and nodded. Only then did Xiao Yuan thank Gu Dafeng and take the wooden flower. Then, Madame Fan told Gu Dafeng about the rules of setting up a stall in the market. The first thing she did was to pay 5 copper coins to rent a small stall. With a stall she could buy and sell. There were also people who could not be offended. What time would the market close tonight and what time would the market open? Gu Dafeng listened carefully. Coincidentally, there was an empty space beside Xiao Yuan. Madame Fan took Gu Dafeng to rent a stall first, then she untied the bag beside her. Chapter 863. Getting More Bold. Gu Yundong almost died of laughter when she saw this. Eldest aunt had pulled in this business with a good voice. A few people came to Gu Dafeng's stall to take a look. There was indeed someone who liked her small wooden carvings. There were even people who went to Xiao Yuan's shop to look at the flowers. In an instant, there were more people here. Gu Yundong felt that her eldest aunt was good at doing business. Her talent had been buried in the past. She stood outside and watched for a while. When she saw that there was no problem, she turned around and left. After getting back into the carriage, Tong Shui Tao asked, "Miss, are we going back?" "Let's not go back for now. Let's go to Brother Xiao's medicine shop." "Yes." Xiao Qingyuan's pharmacy was almost done, and the person who renovated it was still Feng Danning. The decorations of new Tea Pavilion really advertised Feng Danning. The current Feng Danning could not leave at all to return to Yongfu village. Business came one after another, and he could not handle it at all. However, when he heard that Xiao Qingyuan was going to renovate the place, he still came personally without a word. Feng Danning still remembered that it was Gu Yundong who had helped him a lot. From the Gu family's green brick house to the county's Gus, to the prefectural city's Gus, and then to the milk tea shop in the prefectural city, all these were brought to him by Gu Yundong. If she hadn't given him every chance, he would probably still be wandering around the village. Perhaps even the pitiful business in the county city would have been wiped out by his senior brother. Therefore, as long as the Gu family needed it, Feng Danning would definitely come to help without saying anything. As for the Xiao family, they belonged to the Gu family anyway. Feng Danning was tidying up the shop when Gu Yundong walked in. Gu Yundong greeted him. "Uncle Feng, you've worked hard. Where's Brother Xiao?" "He's in the backyard storeroom." Gu Yundong nodded and walked towards the storeroom. She did not notice Feng Danning's hesitant expression behind her. When she reached the backyard, she heard a voice from the storeroom. Xiao Qingyuan was looking at the herbs. The shop was about to open, so the herbs were naturally in place. Gu Yundong looked at his serious back view, tilted her head and smiled. "What are you laughing at?" Xiao Qingyuan didn't even turn around when he heard her footsteps and knew that she was here. He put down the herb in his hand, clapped his hands lightly, and walked out of the storeroom. "Why are you here?" Gu Yundong looked around and saw that there was no one around. Then she whispered into his ear, "I missed you." Xiao Qingyuan's pupils constricted as he pulled her into the storeroom. Gu Yundong was stunned. The smell of traditional Chinese medicine filled his nose. Then, the door of the storeroom was closed. Xiao Qingyuan pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. "Say that again." Gu Yundong smiled. "I missed you." Xiao Qingyuan lowered his head and accurately found her lips, covering them heavily. She buried her head in his arms. "You're getting bolder." From holding hands at the beginning, to hugging, and now. What a scheming fellow. He did not hesitate at all. "Next, when you're of marriageable age, let's get married," Xiao Qingyuan said. Gu Yundong thought to herself, as expected. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 864. Consummation Problem. Gu Yundong looked up and said with a smile, "My father can't bear to marry me off so early. Then I can marry into your family." Without any hesitation, Xiao Qingyuan answered quickly. Gu Yundong choked and could not help but laugh. "I'm still young. You'll be of marriageable age next month. You're not young anymore. I mean, I haven't grown up yet." Xiao Qingyuan froze for a moment. His hands that were holding her felt a little warm. Gu Yundong seemed to hear him swallow his saliva gently. After a while he said in a slightly hoarse voice, "We can get married first and consummate our marriage later." Gu Yundong choked on her own saliva. She covered her mouth and coughed twice. "Consummate the marriage later? You look like you want to kiss, hug, and lift me up when no one is paying attention. Can you hold it in after getting married? It would be strange if I believed you." Xiao Qingyuan said, "Yundong, your father has your mother and your siblings. But I'm alone. Every night when I go home, the house is cold and cheerless. There's no one to talk to. Sometimes, I can't sleep, but I don't know what to do. It's not convenient to talk to you if I want to look for you. I just think that as long as I can see you every day, it's enough." Gu Yundong looked up and met his gloomy gaze. She pursed her lips slightly. Oh no, he was using this trick again. What if her heart softened? Gu Yundong opened her mouth. At this moment, a strong voice came from outside the door. Boss Xiao, where are you?" Gu Yundong could clearly feel that Xiao Qingyuan's arms were tense, and his aura instantly turned cold. "Boss Xiao, have you settled the matter I told you?" The voice was getting closer and closer. Gu Yundong also recognized the voice. It was Dr. Xiong. She took a step back and left Xiao Qingyuan's arms. Then, the air around her turned even colder. She heard Xiao Qingyuan's low curse. "This bear," he tidied Gu Yundong's hair and said, "I'll go out and see him." "Yeah." Xiao Qingyuan opened the door of the storeroom. Gu Yundong turned around and vaguely heard him mutter before he left. It was this bear who agreed. Gu Yundong. "I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. Who was going to agree? Who? Come back here and explain yourself." Gu Yundong stood rooted to the ground and stared. In the end, she did not chase after them. She tidied her clothes and stayed in the storeroom for a while. She pretended to look at the herbs before walking out slowly. In the courtyard, Xiao Qingyuan had already spoken to Dr. Xiong. However, Xiao Qingyuan's face was cold and he looked very unhappy. Although Dr. Xiong was tough and had a bad temper, that was based on his medical skills. He had confidence in this aspect and was very persistent in certain aspects. That was why he was so stubborn. Moreover, Xiao Qingyuan usually tolerated him and gave him enough freedom to perform. Therefore, Dr. Xiong had full authority over medical herbs. But now this expression. Dr. Xiong said a few words to him, but he did not get a response. Especially since the other party's aura was cold, it really made him a little afraid. Could it be that the request he made just now was really too much? After all, what he said now was not related to medical skills. Dr. Xiong did not have much confidence. Just as he was wondering if he should leave, he looked up and saw Gu Yundong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 865. Jiang Bao. Dr. Xiong immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly ran to her. "Miss Gu." "Dr. Xiong, why are you looking for Brother Xiao?" Gu Yundong glanced sideways at Xiao Qingyuan, who was walking over. The latter looked helpless, but his face was no longer cold. Dr. Xiong turned around and saw that he seemed to have become a different person. His eyes widened. "Hey, you actually have two faces. Your attitude towards me and towards Gu Yundong is too different." Dr. Xiong's temper flared up again. He snorted coldly and simply said to Gu Yundong, "I want a guy, but he keeps dilly-dallying and disagreeing. He's a man, So can't he be more straightforward? Must I leave behind so many important things to remind him again and again? Gu Yundong was curious. What guy? He's a very smart shop assistant. His words are especially to my liking, and he recognizes medicinal herbs very quickly. Gu Yundong looked at Xiao Qingyuan, who said, Jiang Bao. Jiang. Wasn't this Xiao Qingyuan's assistant from the county medicine shop? Xiao Qingyuan nodded. That's him. I didn't say that I wouldn't let him come over. Dr. Xiong was furious. But you said that you would only allow him to come next year. How can that do? The shop is about to open. Besides, there's no difference between a few months late and a few months early. He's getting married next year. Dr. Xiong snorted coldly. Is getting married as important as being a worker in the prefectural city? The sooner he comes, the sooner he can become successful in the future. Do you know how important a few more months of studying here is to his life? So what if he gets married? Marriage is only 2 to 3 days. Can't we just let him go back on a good day? Gu Yundong could tell that he was a career maniac. Xiao Qingyuan could not convince Dr. Xiong, so he told Gu Yundong directly, there are many things to prepare before marriage. The procedures are complicated. 2 or 3 days will definitely not be enough. If he comes to the prefectural city, it will be a long journey. I'm afraid it will be inconvenient. His parents and brothers have to settle down first. After he gets married next year, Yuanzhi will also come to the prefectural city. Jiang Bao said that they can come together. Gu Yundong felt that this arrangement was quite good. Although work was important, marriage was even more important. Since the two families were engaged, they had to visit each other often to discuss the details. It couldn't be that Jiang Bao had come to the prefectural city alone, and his parents were the only ones in their family to do everything, right? Then in the future, when Lan Huara married over, wouldn't people gossip about her and say that she was in a hurry? She might not be valued in her husband's family. Moreover, from what Xiao Qingyuan said, Jiang Bao agreed to come over after they got married. However, it had to be said that there were indeed people fighting for this talent everywhere. She used to think that Jiang Bao was smart. The first time they met, she had a deep impression of him. Now, Dr. Xiong had taken a fancy to him. Then will Lan Huara also come to the prefectural city? Gu Yundong had plans to send Lan Huara to New Tea Pavilion again. 1 Su Qing was still too few. Xiao Qingyuan didn't know about this. We'll have to wait for them to get married and decide for themselves. Nowadays, when husbands went out to earn money, wives had to stay at home to take care of their parents. However, if Jiang Bao and Lan Huara got married, he might still want to bring her out. As long as Jiang Bao was willing, he would definitely be able to convince his family. Since that was the case, Gu Yundong would not interfere. She would wait for them to make their own decisions. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 866. Want both. Dr. Xiong, who was standing at the side, was about to die of anger. How did they manage to talk about love with a living person in front of them as if he did not exist? Do you really have to wait until after the new year for Jiang Bao to come over? His voice was sharp and noisy for a moment. Finally, Xiao Qingyuan turned around to look at him. Seeing that he was a little flustered and exasperated, he said, there are 2 choices. Firstly, I bring Jiang Bao over. From now on, he will be the only assistant in this pharmacy. Secondly, Jiang Bao will come back in a few months. There can be 2 assistants in the pharmacy, Jiang Bao and Zhu. Dr. Xiong was instantly suffocated. He wanted Jiang Bao and Zhu. Couldn't he choose both? However, looking at Xiao Qingyuan's implacable appearance, Dr. Xiong ran away. Gu Yundong stared dumbfoundedly at his back as he ran away. After a long while, he finally could not help but laugh out loud. I didn't expect him to be so agile. Haha, he ran so quickly. Xiao Qingyuan was also very helpless. This Dr. Xiong was really... Gu Yundong had enough of laughing before he remembered what he had just said. You let Zhu stay in the pharmacy as a shop assistant? Didn't you say that the 4 of them would learn martial arts and be guards in the future? Xiao Qingyuan said, Zhu recognized that medicinal herb in the manor last time. When I returned, I tested him and found that he was very interested in this aspect and was talented, so I asked for his opinion. He wants to be a shop assistant in this shop and learn more skills. This was his own choice, and Xiao Qingyuan wouldn't object. In any case, as long as Zhu didn't fall behind in martial arts, it was fine. Gu Yundong was enlightened. No wonder Xiao Qingyuan did not plan to hire a shop assistant when he arrived at the prefectural city. He already had someone in mind. Since the prefectural city's shop has a candidate, if you want Jiang Bao and Zhu to work here, what about the pharmacy in the county? Just find another one in the county city. The shop there is small and business is average. It's enough for the shopkeeper to prescribe medicine and pick the herbs. Just find a hard-working person to help move things and clean the shop. They don't have to know about medicinal herbs. The doctor in the county's pharmacy was different from Dr. Xiong. Dr. Xiong's medical skills were good, so after arriving at the prefectural city, he looked for medical centers everywhere to compare medical skills with others. When the medicine shop opened, although he would not be like this, he would have to run out a few days a month. Therefore, Jiang Bao and Zhu, who needed to know about medicinal herbs, should be in the pharmacy. The old doctor in the county city liked to stay in his room and not go out. When a patient came, he would treat them and prescribe medicine. If there was none, he would read the medical book himself or organize the herbs. He could stay indoors for an entire day. He would find another assistant later. The old doctor also had the patience to teach him some simple pharmacology. This was what Jiang Bao learned step by step. But when it came to Jiang Bao and Lan Hua's marriage, Xiao Qingyuan could not help but look at Gu Yundong again. Now that Dr. Xiong had left, could the topic be? Just as Xiao Qingyuan was thinking, footsteps came from behind. He closed his eyes silently. Why was it so hard to talk to her alone? Next time, he might as well take her out somewhere private. Yundong. Gu Yundong turned around and saw Feng Danning walking over. She smiled. Uncle Feng, are you done with your work? Basically. Feng Danning walked towards them. This time, Gu Yundong could tell that Uncle Feng had something to say. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 867. Almighty Feng's Concerns. What's wrong, Uncle Feng? Why are you looking for me? Feng Danning smiled uncomfortably. Actually, it's nothing much. I just heard that. He glanced at Gu Yundong. Seeing her confused look, he could not help but lower his voice. I heard that you found your aunt and uncle? Yes, I did. Feng Danning touched his head. Well, congratulations. Thank you, Uncle Feng. Gu Yundong smiled. From the corner of his eye, he saw two people standing behind a wall not far away. He kept winking at Feng Danning. When Feng Danning saw this, he opened his mouth but did not know what to say. In the end, he simply said, Then there's nothing else. I'll leave first. When the two people behind heard this, they immediately became anxious. Gu Yundong could not help but say, Uncle Feng, you have something to tell me, right? It's fine. Tell me. We're all from Yongfu village. There's nothing to mind. Feng Danning thought for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said, I heard that your uncle also does carpentry. I just want to ask, if you open a shop again in the future, would your uncle help you? Gu Yundong was stunned. She did not expect him to be talking about this. However, it was obvious that Feng Danning was not asking for himself, but for the two carpenters. Was he worried that she had a closer candidate and would not need them in the future? Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. She teased, Uncle Feng, you're now a popular person in the prefectural city. Why? Are you still afraid that you won't have work to do? What are you talking about? What do you mean by not being popular? Didn't you help me get to where I am today? Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to walk out of the village. Gu Yundong could understand his worry, but she felt that it was completely unnecessary. Uncle Feng, although my uncle is also a carpenter, he's different from you. His work is more exquisite and there's no conflict. Besides, Uncle Feng, you have a group of people under you now. Your team has already matured. What are you worried about? Feng Danning sighed. Yundong, I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. I just feel that you don't need us anymore in the future. I suddenly feel a little flustered. Haha, then I'm fine. I'll go to work. Gu Yundong nodded, and Feng Danning quickly ran away. The two people hiding behind the wall immediately pulled him over, and the three of them muttered to each other. Gu Yundong looked at their backs thoughtfully. Why do I feel like all of them are too dependent on me? Could it be that she was too opinionated? Xiao Qingyuan had wanted to say something a few times, but he was interrupted. He no longer had a temper. However, when he turned his head and saw her frowning as if she was very troubled, he felt that she was cute. He couldn't help but hold her hand. You are very charming. Hence, he would always become someone else's backbone. Not to mention Feng Danning, even the village chief of Yongfu village, Chen Liang, could not help but come to the Gu family to discuss with her when something big happened. His Yundong would become the center of attention wherever he went, making people involuntarily approach him. At this moment, Xiao Qingyuan actually felt an inexplicable sense of pride. Gu Yundong sniggered. Seeing him say such things so seriously, she actually felt a little amused. All right. I'm charming. Doesn't that mean you're even more charming now that you're my fiancé? Xiao Qingyuan suddenly turned around, and his eyes became restless again. He felt that the atmosphere that had disappeared just now had returned. Seeing this, Gu Yundong quickly pulled her hand away and ran away. I'm going to Aunt Kess' house. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 868. Arrangements for Aunt Ku. Gu Yundong ran out of the door and soon disappeared. Today, Yunshu and Yuanzhi had both gone to Aunt Kess' house. She planned to pick them up. When they arrived at the Ku residence, they saw Aunt Ku happily preparing delicious food for them. Aunt Ku had always been good to children, let alone Yunshu, Yunke, Yuanzhi, and Madame Yang. But when she saw Gu Yundong, she raised her face again, making Gu Yundong not know whether to laugh or cry. There were still some changes in Aunt Kess' house. There were a few pots of flowers in the corner of the courtyard, which seemed to be given to her by Madame Yang. There were some things for children to play with in the central room, as well as paper, ink, brush, and inkstone. Gu Yundong was silent. It was too lonely for Aunt Ku to live alone, but she refused to retire with him. Her temper was really stubborn. If Gu Yundong talked to her, she would lose her temper. Retirement? Gu Yundong suddenly thought of something. She went up to Aunt Ku and said, Aunt, have you ever thought about working at new Tea Pavilion? You don't have to do anything. Just help out a little. If you want to rest, rest. If you want to work, work. If you're tired, go to our room to sleep. If you're bored, you can chat with someone. As for the salary, I'll give you a little bit. How about that? Aunt Kess' hand paused for a moment. That slight movement stunned Gu Yundong. It seemed that Aunt Ku had thought about it. In that case, she had neglected him. Gu Yundong was instantly vexed. However, Aunt Ku snorted and said, Why would I go? There are so many people. With my temper, I will offend the guests. Gu Yundong smiled and held her hand. No. Although Aunt Ku is always fierce to me, you're much more patient with children. You also know how to tell stories. Look, Kiki, Yunshu, Yuanzhi, and the rest like you. Our new Tea Pavilion also has small guests. You can take care of them, right? Aunt Ku used to be very good at talking. She remembered that when Nyet Song first saw her, he had reminded her that the children around her were afraid of Aunt Ku because once she pulled them over, she would talk endlessly. However, after spending a year with Yunshu and the rest, Aunt Ku would no longer have such a situation because Yunshu was more eloquent than her. Sometimes, when Aunt Ku told a story, when Yunshu heard something he liked, he would tell her a bunch of random things. Aunt Ku had no room to interrupt. Moreover, this new tea pavilion was opened by her, Nie Shuang, and Madame Dai. Nie Shuang did not say anything else. Aunt Ku was her biological aunt and they had a good relationship. Madame Dai also knew Aunt Ku and the two of them were friends. As for Madame Chiu, who had just been hired today, Gu Yundong felt that she and Aunt Ku were probably the same kind of people. They were both smart people who could understand each other without saying much. Perhaps the two of them could even become friends. Actually, Gu Yundong had thought about letting Aunt Ku be the shopkeeper. Unfortunately, she had been rejected by Aunt Ku from the start. She did not want to take on such a responsibility at all, and did not have the time. Therefore, Gu Yundong never mentioned letting Aunt Ku go to New Tea Pavilion again. However, she did not expect that Aunt Ku did not want to be the shopkeeper, and yet she was not against doing things at New Tea Pavilion, where she could interact with so many children. As expected, when Aunt Ku heard the last sentence, she could not hold back her expression and smiled. "All right, since you're so sincere, there's no harm in me forcing myself to go. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 869. Gu Yundong's Proposal. Gu Yundong could not help but secretly roll her eyes. "You even learned how to speak like me?" But Gu Yundong was still very happy that Aunt Ku agreed. However, there was one thing that needed to be mentioned. Don't be too tired. There's no harm in going over later in the morning. There aren't many customers at the beginning anyway. You have to come back early at night. There's no need to wait until after closing. Although your place isn't very far from New Tea Pavilion, it's not too late. I'll be worried. All right, I understand." Aunt Ku pushed her away. "Don't be sticky. Hurry up and ask your mother and the children to wash their hands. It's time to eat." Gu Yundong smiled and went out. After the few of them finished their lunch, she brought them home. Only Bien Han and the Lu family were left at home. Gu Dajiang had brought Yunshu and Yuanzhi back to Tianhai Academy yesterday and happened to meet Master Xia. Today, Master Xia had called him to the academy to help copy books, so he was not around. Bien Han sat by the window and was carving with a piece of wood in his hand. He was very focused. Hearing the voice at the door, he looked up and welcomed his son who ran in. He asked him what had happened when he went out today. Bien Yuanzhi had told him in detail that ever since he reunited with his parents, he had become especially coquettish and cheerful. Gu Yundong looked at Bien Han and thought of what Feng Danning had said today. Eldest uncle was indeed more focused on the exquisite work of carving. He could also do some tables and stools. However, he was not used to following the construction team and renovating the shop. Gu Yundong did not think that it was a big deal. It was already very impressive if one's certain skills were superb. He did not have to worry about food and clothes. In the past, when she was in her hometown, there were not many people who hired her uncle to work, so his skills did not improve much. But in recent days, Gu Yundong had seen the wooden carvings and found that they were much more exquisite and complicated. After some thought, Gu Yundong walked to the window. Seeing her coming over, Bien Han looked up and smiled. "Yundong, are you looking for me?" "Yes." Gu Yundong looked at the few small things he had carved today and said, "Uncle, have you ever thought of making a set of wooden carvings?" "A set of wooden carvings?" Bien Han did not seem to understand. Gu Yundong said, "For example, you can sculpt 12 zodiac signs, calligraphy, and any objects. Then, you can mark these wooden carvings to show that you sculpted them. Some people will have obsessive-compulsive disorder. They might buy other zodiac signs because they like one of them. Some people like to collect such sets. Do you think this is okay?" Yuanzi's eyes lit up when he heard that. "That's right. You can even sculpt plums, orchids, bamboos, and chrysanthemums. Scholars will definitely like it." The more Bien Han listened, the more excited he became. That's right, why didn't he think of it? In the past, he always carved anything he thought of. Now that she heard Yundong's words, she suddenly felt enlightened. "You're right. I'll start carving the 12 zodiacs now." Yuanzhi was in a hurry. "Father, I'll help you write." Gu Yundong saw that the father and son were immediately busy. She smiled and left. Bien Han and Yuanzhi were so busy that they forgot the time. They only realized it when the sky gradually darkened. Eldest Aunt Gu was not back yet. Bien Han immediately became anxious. "Yuanzhi, go out and take a look. Why isn't your mother back yet?" Yuanzhi put down his brush and was about to leave when the door to the courtyard opened. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 870. Making money, making money. Bien Yuanzhi looked up and saw his mother walking in with a flushed face. She was carrying a bag in her left hand and a basket in her right. No one knew what was inside. His face lit up and he quickly ran over. "Mother, you're finally back." Gu Dafeng's smile widened. She patted her son's head forcefully and said to Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong, who had also walked out, "Brother, Yundong, here. This is meat. Cook this for dinner." Gu Dajiang stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. "What happened to your throat?" Gu Dafeng coughed lightly. Her throat was indeed very uncomfortable, and her voice was hoarse. Gu Yundong had already guessed it. She must have shouted so hard that her throat was damaged. Sigh, she should have known. She had forgotten to remind her. Unexpectedly, Eldest aunt was so honest that she insisted on shouting until she could not. "My throat is fine. I'll just drink more hot water." Gu Dafeng waved her hand indifferently. She was full of energy now. What was a throat? She didn't even know. Gu Yundong walked forward and took the basket from Gu Dafeng's hand. She removed the cloth covering it and realized that other than a piece of meat, there was also a pot of flowers. It must have been given to her by Xiao Yuan and her daughter. This meat should weigh 2 catties, right? "Aunt, is your business good today?" Gu Dafeng chuckled. Seeing that Bian Han had already been carried out by Lu Shang, she mysteriously walked to the central room and took off the bag on her back. "Let me tell you, my business is especially good today. I've sold more than half of the wooden carvings." As she spoke, she opened the bag and everybody saw that there were only a few wooden carvings left inside. They looked quite small. Immediately after, Gu Dafeng searched around her body and took out a cloth bag. Then, she opened the cloth bag and took out a money bag. The money bag was quite heavy. With a light knock, it clanged. One could tell that it was filled with copper coins. Gu Dafeng opened the cloth bag excitedly and poured out the copper coins inside. With a clatter, copper coins covered most of the table. A few children at the side exclaimed, "Wow, so much money!" Gu Dafeng said proudly, "I earned 700 copper coins today. There are so many people in the prefectural city. When I sat in the market and shouted, many people came over. Moreover, they're all quite rich. Other than a few people who bargained a few times, the others bought what they liked." She looked very emotional. "It's just that the vendors beside us are working too hard. Their voices are really loud. It's not easy for everyone to live." Gu Yundong was speechless. "Eldest aunt, don't do this tomorrow." Someone would say that she treated the flower and bird market as a vegetable market. However, the others agreed with Gu Dafeng. The children had already started counting the copper coins. Only Gu Dajiang frowned. "They're loud, but you're shouting too? Then you don't have to use so much strength, right? If you're like this, you won't even be able to speak tomorrow. How can you sell wooden carvings?" Gu Yundong laughed dryly. "Father, you're wrong. It's not that eldest aunt is following others to shout, but that others are following her. This is all caused by eldest aunt." Gu Dafeng felt as if she had been struck by lightning after hearing Gu Dajiang's words. That's right, she was too excited just now and forgot about this. If her throat was damaged, how was she going to do business tomorrow? Chapter 871. Miscalculation. At the thought of this, Gu Dafeng could not help but slap her thigh hard. I miscalculated. Wasn't this the first time she had earned so much money? Wasn't she too happy? In the past, when she was in Jiangyu County, it was her man who sold wooden carvings. He would often bring wooden carvings with a bag to the county city. When he came back, he would bring them back with a bag. He didn't have much money. There were too few people in Jiangyu County who bought the wooden carvings, so this was the first time Gu Dafeng was doing business personally. She was also nervous and thought that it would be good enough if she could sell a few. She did not expect there to be so many rich people in the prefecture capital. She would be more excited if she sold one, and her voice would be higher. After so many times, wouldn't she be unable to care about anything else? Gu Dajiang shook his head and asked Auntie Nyo, "Do we have rock sugar chrysanthemum tea at home?" "Yes, my lord. Make her a cup." Gu Dafeng touched her throat with her fingers and finally felt a little uncomfortable. Bien Han said worriedly, "Rest at home tomorrow. Get your throat better first." "How can I do that? It's not easy for me to get a good start today. Of course, I have to strike while the iron is hot tomorrow." "But," Gu Dafeng glared at him, "you can't speak when your throat hurts, but you don't allow me to gesture with my hands?" Bien Han said helplessly, "Even if you want to sell, there aren't many wooden carvings left at home. You've sold most of them today." The wooden carvings that Gu Dafeng had sold today were all secretly made by him in the Zhou mansion. There were not many of them. For the past few days, because of his poor health, Gu Dajiang had forbidden him from overworking. When he was free, he would sunbathe, sleep, and eat. He had very limited time to carve every day. Therefore, there were not many wooden carvings. Gu Dafeng was stunned when she heard that. That made sense. Sigh, he couldn't make as fast as she could sell. It was really worrying. At this moment, the children finally finished counting the money. All of them looked very excited. 650 copper coins. "Mother, we're missing 50 copper coins." Bien Yuanzhi raised his hand and reported the situation. Gu Dafeng slapped his hand away. "Didn't I use it to buy meat? Why is it missing?" "Ah, right, I forgot." He rubbed his head and quickly became happy again. "Mother, you're amazing. You actually earned so much money." "Of course." Gu Dafeng was smug. Gu Yundong also said, "I knew it. Eldest aunt is indeed good at doing business. Look at these copper coins. It takes a few people half a day to count them." Although the current 700 copper coins was nothing to Gu Yundong, it was different for eldest aunt Gu. In the past, she wished that 1 copper coin could be converted into 2 copper coins to spend. Her living expenses were only 2 to 3 taels a year. Now, it had only been a day, but she had already earned a quarter's living expenses. How could she not be happy? This meant a lot in itself. As expected, Gu Dafeng became even more excited when she heard Gu Yundong say that. She nodded repeatedly. "I'm just like you." Gu Dajiang was speechless. That was the opposite. It should be that the niece resembled the aunt. However, he still expressed his approval and happily praised eldest sister's achievements today. After he finished speaking, the others immediately praised her. Gu Dafeng felt a little smug. She almost thought that she was about to become the richest man. That night, Gu Dafeng felt satisfied as she ate the 2 pounds of fat she had bought. Chapter 872. Reluctant to spend the silver. But at night, eldest aunt Gu still knocked on Gu Yundong's door. Gu Yundong opened the door and was stunned to see her. She quickly invited her in. "Aunt, are you looking for me?" Gu Dafeng nodded with a serious expression. Gu Yundong closed the door. Seeing her expression, she could not help but ask, "What's wrong? Did you encounter trouble at the market today?" There's no trouble. The market is pretty good. It's very lively." Gu Dafeng's voice was still very hoarse, and it even seemed to have become more serious. Her voice was so soft that it sounded like she was breathing. Gu Yundong silently looked up at the sky. "Lively? It should be a competition of voices." Gu Dafeng lowered her head and took out a bag of things. Gu Yundong looked over. "Wasn't this the money bag from before?" Gu Dafeng looked at the money bag and smiled in satisfaction. Then she placed it on the table and said, "This is for you." "For me? For what?" Gu Yundong was confused. Gu Dafeng glanced at her from the corner of her eye. "You fed us, clothed us, and provided for our accommodation. You even provided for Yuanzhi's studies. Later, you still have to treat your uncle's legs. We can't accept it for nothing, right? I know that you're in charge of the family's money, so I won't give it to your father. You can keep these. Although it's not much, he'll work harder to earn money in the future." Gu Yundong understood that his eldest aunt could not enjoy everything here with a clear conscience. She was a person who could distinguish between gratitude and grudges. This could be seen from the first thing she did after she recovered. She was in a hurry to go to the market to sell wooden carvings. Gu Yundong also knew that they had a good relationship with Eldest Aunt, and Eldest Aunt and father had relied on each other since they were young. However, at the end of the day, they were already two families. They could help Eldest Aunt overcome her difficulties, but they could not help them for the rest of their lives. Thus, Gu Yundong did not stop Eldest Uncle from continuing to carve. He did not stop Eldest Aunt from going to the market to sell wooden carvings. Sooner or later, they would have to live on their own. But not now. Gu Yundong picked up the money bag and placed it back in Gu Dafeng's arms. Eldest Aunt, I know what you're thinking, but you should take this money back yourself. If you give this money to me now, where will you get the capital to do business? Gu Dafeng blinked. The capital to do business? The carvings were made of wood. Previously, in the Zhou mansion, Mrs. Ran had brought it over for them. Back in his hometown, it was Bien Han who went straight to the mountain to cut the tree down. A very thick tree could be used for a long time. However, this prefectural city seemed to disallow people to cut trees at will. Gu Dafeng did not expect this. Furthermore, Eldest Aunt, Eldest Uncle's skills are getting better and better. In the future, he can even make more complicated wooden carvings that have a better meaning and sell them to those rich families. Such wooden carvings also have a lot of requirements for wood. When the time comes, will you also need silver to buy good wood? Gu Dafeng thought about it and agreed. Then I'll take this money back first? Yes, you should take it back. Gu Yundong nodded with certainty. When Eldest Aunt earns a lot of money in the future, I won't hide even if you throw silver at me. What nonsense are you talking about? I can't bear to throw money at you. Gu Yundong asked, Eldest Aunt, are you reluctant to part with me, or are you reluctant to part with the silver? Of course I can't bear to part with the money. Look at how thick-skinned you are. What's the use of throwing it at you? Eldest Aunt Gu was a straightforward person. Since Gu Yundong had said so, she did not insist on giving it to him. She immediately took the money bag and stood up. All right, I won't give it to you first. I'll buy a few catties of meat later. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. He wiped his hands on his clothes and held the wheels on both sides. The wheels were made of wood and were very heavy. It took a lot of effort to push the wheelchair forward. Bien Han sat on it and couldn't exert any strength. However, he did not give up. It was not until he was covered in sweat that the wheelchair finally moved forward. Once the wheelchair started walking, due to inertia it was much easier to push again. Gu Dafeng exclaimed, That's great! Bien Han turned his head. He was sweating profusely, but the smile on his face was especially satisfied. Then, Dr. Xiong checked his pulse and said that he had recuperated well during this period of time. In a few days, he would be able to treat his legs. The whole family was very happy, but this happiness lasted until night time. There was only sadness left. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. A.